All right, we are recording this time.
Yes.
Not sure what can be seen.
I don't know what you want to see. You want to see us or the crowd?
Probably.
Yeah. You have a problem with him? All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. We are live streaming and recording everything here, so we're on the record. I changed things around a bit on the agenda, and I opted to go ahead and start with public comments. So that way we can go ahead and get whatever concerns the public has out of the way, and then be able to discuss those concerns during the rest of our meeting instead of waiting to the end and then already having our meeting and then public comments would come in at the end. So I will go ahead and open the floor for public comments at this point to see who wants to start first or whatever.
The public comment had to be last after the meeting, so they could discuss what you talked about at the meeting. Now that was the statute.
Well, if we want to, I don't have the statute in front of me, so I just feel it's kind of, it's kind of like having a truth in taxation after you've already passed a budget.
Oh, I'm not arguing with you. I just think that there's rules that govern how, like, we have to set those forth on an agenda. I think we have two. It doesn't stop you from having two. You don't want it to get in one at the end, for sure.
Okay, well,
But I think you still have to have one at the end.
okay. Well, we're still signing, so if anybody has anything they'd like to bring up at the moment, and we can at least take that under advisement as we go through the meeting. But Harry didn't say.
Not on that, but you have a comment online that says they want to see Bill speaks.
Want to see
They
who is
want it on
speaking?
The board or not.
Oh. Geez, I don't know how to do that.
Unfortunately,
Do
our
the best we can.
technology, yeah.
We'll have to get another camera in a corner, I guess, or something. Sorry, we can't manage that one at the moment.
Just say your name.
That would be nice, yeah. Can I ask where we're at with the spreadsheet that was supposed to connect the two systems?
I do have that on the agenda, so hopefully we'll be bringing that up and get an update.
We didn't see it. But then they didn't. They wouldn't have anything that see nothing. Yeah.
How many years we should have that down?
Yeah, it probably gives me a turn invoice in. If I get to your next one.
Thanks for the phone or the computer, that's.
Both.
One's on Facebook and one's recording the Teams meeting. So. You
We're trying to double up here, so.
want this thing? It's, you want, I mean, if you want to, yeah. Change it. Oh, there's still no way. Let's see if we can stand up here. So stand up there. Okay. You want
Michelle, are they comment about getting sick
So
from?
I'm like, yeah, I would go ahead and,
Well, this is very delayed, so let's see, he's just now getting up to go get it to him. Yes, it's new up there.
yes, I would get at it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, hearing no public comments at the moment, we'll move forward, as we're still signing the 2025, 26, and 27 budgets. Under the website, I just wanted to announce that the fiscal year 2025 financial treasurer report is available on the website. So there have been some people, numerous people that have asked about, well, how did 2025 end up? I went ahead and had our treasurer go ahead and get the same year-end report that I would use in order to figure out what the numbers are. So I'm not privy to anything that the public's not privy to. So that is out there on the website for anybody to use and do the calculations to determine how we ended up in 2025. Many people have talked about deficits. I guess that's kind of anytime I've referenced the deficit, it's been specific to the general fund, but people may be interested in, is there a deficit in the health department? Is there a deficit in an ambulance? So for us to say what deficit, how much, as a county as a whole, I don't know how you answer that. So I think it's important to be transparent and just give all the financials. And that's why we posted it out there on the website, so they can look at the entire year end by department to see what those numbers ended up being. Ultimately, the auditors will determine what the end results are, but those are the numbers that we have at this point. So, also an announcement for the 2026 employee compensation is out there on the website too. Thank you to our clerk in getting that information put together. So that should be updated as of what I believe is supposed to be paid for the upcoming fiscal year 2026. That includes salaries. I believe it had the stipends, compensation for benefits, the whole 9 yards. So you get to see where all of your tax dollars are going. Under the review of the 2026 budget, one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that, again, we get a summary report at the end of every month from the treasurer's office. So we are 5 months into our fiscal year. I wanted to bring attention to major revenues for the county clerk fees, circuit clerk fees, personal property taxes, and sheriff fees. They are actually down about $106,000 from what we budgeted for. So when you look at those percentages used on that summary sheet for those revenues, we are in the 38%, 30%, 29%, and 33% for revenues compared to what we budgeted. But we should be running about 41% or so. We're 5 months in. So while there may be some additional monies that have been received in other funds that we had anticipated a lower amount, and thankfully we've gotten more. For example, the sales tax, I think, is actually higher this year than when we anticipated. One thing that I am trying to make sure that we're all on the same page is these are our revenues that we expect to get to help continue to pay the expenses that we expect to pay. So just because somebody has, where a department may have $200,000, $500,000 in it sitting in a CD, that's not revenued against expenses, that's cash. That's already sitting out there as an asset, so we can't really count that as revenue for the current year. That was revenue that came from prior years. It's now sitting as an asset in a bank account. So as we continue further into this and start looking for definitely our 2027 budget, we need to be comparing what do we expect to get as revenue to be able to compare that to what are we going to spend in expenses. So right now, as I said, we're about $106,000 short based off of our expected revenue in those four major categories. I don't know that there's anything we can really do about it. We're just at the mercy of collecting what we collect. So I don't know exactly how those fees are paid. If there's fees that are outstanding, that maybe letters being sent saying, hey, send a pay your bill. But I leave that to the department heads.
So I get the county clerk fees, those are by recording transactions. So you don't record a lot of real estate. That's what the real estate market dictates that. But since for this fiscal year, 12/1 through 5/9, you're ahead in revenue $300,000. Your revenue total is ahead. You started at the beginning of the year with a $201,000 surplus. You brought in 3.7 million and you've only spent 3.3 million.
Where are you getting your numbers from?
The fund report that I read. It should be in that packet, I think, that I gave you. Yeah, it's on page 2. So based upon the budget that we posted online, or the final financial report that we posted online, the county general fund ended the year with a surplus of over $100,000. We had $200,000 in the general fund in this report starting December 1st of 2025. And we're now reporting that we've taken in more than we've spent, and we have an ending balance as of today of almost $600,000.
So the beginning balance that you're talking about, that is from the prior year, correct?
Correct.
And the 3.7 in receipts, that is just coming from the general fund.
This is only general fund.
Okay. So the $3,700,000, that includes the $750,000 that we received in CDs.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I'm just saying that right now your revenues are up,
The CDs aren't revenue. That's what I'm trying to explain.
but your overall amount that you've taken in according to what you've spent is up, is what we're getting at. So I think the big questions were, when they were in a deficit necessarily at this point. This is not showing that, because you also have about $318,000 in general fund revenue sitting in Fund 18 that's not accounted for, that's general fund money. So you would add that onto this 500. So even if you take the 750 out, you're still in a surplus.
That's not enough.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when you get $750,000 of cash that's sitting in another department that's already been earned from the road tax agreement or a road use agreement, that was income from years prior. You can't count it again as revenue again in this year for $750,000, which is included in this 3.7 million. The $355,000 that we've already borrowed from the anticipation note is also a loan that's counted as revenue on this report, but it's not a revenue. It's actually kind of a replacement of the tax that we'll eventually get. So it could kind of be considered a revenue, but
You
it's
borrowed
not.
how much in the anticipation?
Last I looked,
155.
well, now we're at 555, but the numbers I'm going off of are at the end of or the end of April. So at the end of April, we used 355,000 of our anticipation note.
Of the general funds,
Yes.
355, okay. Is that number approved specifically or no?
Was that number approved?
Yeah.
Our treasurer went ahead and said, yes, we need to borrow some money, so we
No,
can
I,
pay a bill.
and it totally, yeah, absolutely. 100%. I just want to make sure, I didn't know if that number reflected in any minutes that you had had specifically. So we don't think so. We did, I mean, you guys just gave a blanket approval to borrow up to X amount, you know.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
I would say we borrow up to the anticipation note level in order to make sure we meet our bills.
Okay, and so Scott, you think that that's going to show up in here and not as a transfer? You know how you put it in the system?
Goes up as a transfer in.
It
Oh,
does show us a transfer in, but all transfer ins are considered revenue for this 3.7 million.
they are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's where if you actually look at the report and see at the very top, there are 000 zeros. And those are your transfer in of the 355 or 500,000. The other thing is that the 500,000 that we pay back is actually considered an expense. Well, that's not really true either. A $500,000 loan should be considered a liability. So that's where I ran into a problem at the very beginning of this year to where I'm trying to determine you have assets and liabilities that we don't ever see reports on. And then you have your profit loss statement or your cash flow statement here that says what are your revenues coming in and what are your expenses going out. So when we're taking $750,000 of CD money into the general fund, I don't consider that as revenue. I just consider that's not $750,000 we're going to get later. So we sure wouldn't count on it as to put it into future expenses. I'm saying that the cap is sitting someplace else and should not be considered part of this $3.7 million of revenue. But it does count as revenue when you look at these fund status reports. So it's, you have to kind of look at the whole part and figure out what you need to back out. You need to back out the $355,000 of loan because the loan isn't a revenue. You need to back out the $750,000 of CD money that we got because that's not a revenue, that was cash sitting someplace else. You need to add back in the $500,000 that we paid back because that was a liability, that wasn't an expense. So there's some math that needs to kind of go into this, and to look at a report on face value and say, this is what we had, this is what we went to, is very misleading.
Well, I know, but when I get FOIA'd or people ask me, this is what I would send out. I think that's why everybody's confused and are wanting an actual number of maybe what the deficit is, because this is what I send out to people, and I don't have the luxury of explaining it like that, right? So what I guess we're saying is, if these need to be tracked differently, we should probably be doing that to make it more clear for people.
I don't disagree. And again, I would have preferred to see that $500,000 that was paid for a loan. It shouldn't be an expense. When you're paying off a loan, it's not an expense. It's you're paying off a liability. And again, you're getting the $750,000 in cash from CDs. That's not revenue. What we have revenue is fees. You know, we get the fees from the clerk and the circuit clerk and the sheriff's office. Those are revenues. Cash that is received from other departments from money that's sitting there is not really considered revenue. It was revenue at one time, but it's already been counted for, so we shouldn't count it twice. So that's also, again, why I said, let's put the fund report out there on the website. And I'm more than happy to answer whatever questions people may have about it. But I don't want to come out and say, here's the definitive number for a deficit. Because first of all, I don't know exactly what they're asking. And secondly, that number is going to change once the audit's done.
Yeah.
So therefore, I don't want to hang my hat on saying, here's what the deficit was. But as was asked at a prior board meeting, I do know that we should have been probably about $500,000 less than we anticipated because that's what we had to borrow in order to make payroll. And that's what we ended up paying back. So we must have had a deficit of at least $500,000.
You don't think that's cash flow? You think that was a formal deficit?
Well, again, cash flow and deficit potentially are two different things. And the reason I say that is we could have went and borrowed the $500,000 receive the cash and flow it to the expense. So that's not a cash flow problem. We have cash because we borrowed it, but we still have the expense. Those are two different things. I mean, so cash flow is, do you have the cash in hand to pay your bills?
Right,
If you borrow the money, you'll have the cash in hand to pay the bills.
right.
Okay, so you have a cash flow that you can pay your bill with because you borrowed the money, but you were still short the revenue. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to borrow the money.
Well, but so because our property taxes come in so late, that you use the property tax to pay back the loan. So if the property tax came in a month earlier, you wouldn't have had to borrow that $500,000 because you would have had the property tax. That's what I'm asking about, if you think it was a cash flow problem, because you were able to pay it back in full after we got our property taxes.
Well, we paid it back in full after we actually used the CD money.
But what I'm getting at is, if you would have had that 500,000 beforehand, before you borrowed it, you wouldn't have had to borrow it, right? If your property taxes came in 2 months earlier, you would have had $500,000 extra, wouldn't have had to borrow it. That's what I'm saying, cash flow. Because the money came in, it just came in at the end of the year.
The real estate taxes came in and paid the anticipation note that we had.
Right.
In
Which is
lieu of the
only
tax.
80%. It's not the 100% of what your real estate taxes are. So you still have money that you're making on top of what you can borrow. You can't borrow 100% of your anticipation note.
I know this.
It's 85%. So
Okay.
you had extra money.
Well, yeah, there would have been 15% that would have been collected, later. And that may be where the $200,000 of extra cash is sitting. But then again, that's where you look at your total revenue received against your total expenses on the summary report.
Sure.
So that's not going to be a cash flow statement. That's going to be what revenue did you receive from your taxes against what expenses did you have?
Right.
Okay. So cash flow and expense and income are kind of two different things. They relate to where you have to have the cash flow in or the income in order to pay the expenses back out. But we can get cash. That's not the problem. We can go and get the cash by borrowing it in order to flow it to our expenses. That doesn't mean we receive the revenue. That's the bigger issue, is that our expenses continue to be more than our revenues. Not a cash flow problem.
So if we look at the report that we posted online, the general fund revenues versus expenses, it shows like $154,000 surplus for 2025. That's just general fund. That's revenue versus expenses.
So I'm looking at page 13 of the budget summary that was just sent out.
For 26.
At the end of April.
That's 26. That's my 25.
Right, but it's still going to be the same idea, the same makeup as far as how to read it.
Okay.
So the revenue is 3.2 million. The expenses are 3.1. So the logic in that would be, well, we actually have $130,000 more in revenue than we do expenses. But again, what you have to add into that 3.2 is the 750,000 that we had from the CDs, the 355,000 per this report that we had from the anticipation note. So that right there is an extra $1 million of revenue that's being counted that wasn't really income. But the expense side, you have to back off that have to back off the $500,000 loan that we paid back as an expense. So we actually have collected about 2.2 million and have paid out about 2.6 in expenses. So even though we're showing a surplus here between the revenue that we've received because we're counting we're counting CD money and loans as revenue, and put that against the expenses that we're paying, which is also paying off a loan that we had, they're kind of skewed when it comes up to what is our real revenue compared to what is our real expenses. And that's where you have to kind of go through line by line and realize, oh, well, this was counted as revenue, but it was a loan, or this was counted as revenue, but this was money from CDs. So that's where it can be very confusing when you start looking at these reports and not know those little idiosyncrasies just because of the way that we track things.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the thing, because I mean, in the report that was sent out, it shows that $750,000 is transferred. But on this report, it's showing $0 transferred for the general fund. So on that report, it has a transfer section. It shows you what's transferred in to not count it as receipts.
The report that you gave me?
Yeah, the year to date, the 12/1/25 through 5/19/26.
Okay.
Okay, see that transfer line or operating balance?
$600.
That's a different one. It's 0. So if it was really a transfer and shouldn't be counted as a receipt, it should be in the transfer section. But what I'm getting at is, I think there's a whole thing about why people are confused, and it's because of, I can print these reports off all day long, and I'm at least lucky to understand a little bit of it because I see it, but until stuff actually, goes where it needs to go or where people can explain it, I think that's where everybody's kind of getting lost at. And, because it's not making sense. And if we send this stuff out, if people request it, then we get bombarded with questions, and I would love to answer them, but, we come to finance meetings and different things for clarification, and based upon that discussion about a transfer, what we just talked about is not reflecting on this.
Yeah, I don't have the full report handy in my computer, just froze, so, I can't pull it up. I can look at it tomorrow, but
I guess my thing is the questions that we've been getting, were just like that people are really interested in what the deficit number is, and I get that there's a lot that goes into it. I just think that it would be nice for, maybe the finance committee to put together a number with a margin of error to be able to tell people, because we went through all of the budget hearings. I think the numbers were thrown out of a deficit of up to $1.8 million even. And people are really concerned, and I don't blame them. And especially when you're getting into property tax board of review, I think that, while yes, these reports are complicated, things might not be in the spot they need to be, that's stuff that can be worked out. But I think as far as information for the public, it needs to be a little bit more clear on what we're actually looking at. And if we're confused and it's our numbers, I think that right there speaks volumes.
There are none of them that are gonna be accurate until they're audited,
Well, but I think
because
we
the
can go margin
auditors will
there.
do accrual accounting. It's just like the property tax, the final distribution, property tax shows up in this report. But yet the auditors will probably accrue that back to last year's. But it shows up in the receipts in this one.
so the beginning balance and imbalances, Scott, do you believe that those are accurate? Those are what are supposed to be reconciled to the general fund checking account? Do you believe
I
that?
don't know what she got.
So this would be county code or county general fund 001. During this year's. Awesome.
Oh, this is last year's. I'm okay that we started with the 100.
Get that copy. Get that. Still copy. Okay. I'll back it up. Oh, everything's on the cloud. I hope that I can see some. Yeah. Sure.
I'm just curious, when you said that a loan isn't considered an expense, did I misunderstand that, or because when I make a loan payment, personally, I consider that an expense.
A loan payment would be a cash flow. So when you're trying to say, when you make $1,000 loan payment, part of that is principal, part of that's interest. So the $1,000 is considered for cash flow purposes, but the liability may be $200,000 depending on how much you borrowed.
Right, but for a person, a general person at home doing their budget, when you have $1,000 loan payment a month, you're gonna expense $1,000 because that's
Look at
what
what,
you
and
need
I have it.
to have available to make
Look
the
at the
budget
fee status.
So
Got,
I think that just was confusing to me when you said it's not an expense.
I've got a
Everybody's gonna give us a loan considered to break it all out.
So here's the part that I would say. The expense was the payroll that we had to borrow the $500,000 for. You're not gonna count it twice. You don't have $500,000 of payroll and then another expense of $500,000 loan. You borrowed $500,000 to pay that expense. You're gonna cash flow that $500,000 back out to pay the loan off, but you don't count the expense twice. You didn't have $1 million of expenses. You only had the $500,000 expenses. You just didn't have the cash to pay it. So you had to borrow.
Maybe I'm just making it too difficult. I'm just saying, when I like sign a note for a car for $1,000, when I'm writing that out of my checkbook every month, I'm not, most general people don't sit and go, well, how much is principal, how much is interest? They're like, this is how much I have to pay.
Yeah.
So for the general public, what is our expense for that month?
But when
$1,000.
we get a loan, it shows up as revenue, but it's not income. So you like, you
But
don't,
it's
you don't
still
go
an
get a car,
expense.
you don't go get a car loan, but you don't go get a car loan and say your salary is $50,000 a year and you go get a $20,000 car loan, you don't say, oh, I have $70,000 in revenue for that year.
Right. No, I get that part. I'm just saying, but on this side of it, I think it's still an expense. Your loan payment is an expense.
It's a loan payment's an expense, yeah.
But
Yeah.
well, it's part of what you pay for your cash flow, but the expense was the car. The $40,000 that you spent on the car was the
Yeah,
expense.
but I mean, I'm just saying for general public, we're trying to make it easier for people to understand. People don't really care how much the loan was. They want to know how much money you're putting out each month. And we want to know how much money do I have to put out each month for that car loan so that I can keep driving my car.
Well, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Filbert, but I would say that government accounting is not the same as simple accounting, to where if you've got to do double entry and you've got to sit there and try and track stuff, that's not what we normally do in our house. So ideally, it would be nice if we could equate to our accounting system as the regular way a person figures out, this is my house payment, this is my insurance payment, this is how much I got coming out by my paycheck, and this is what we do. But that's not how the government accounting system works. So
I still think it should be considered an expense. And I understand that you're saying it's not, the loan payment isn't necessarily a revenue. I mean, I get what you're coming from, but let's ask Mr. Filbert. He's
Well, no. I mean, first of all, it really, it has nothing to do with Mr. Filbert.
right.
I'm not in charge of accounting finances, but I am a CPA, and we're making this conversation way too complicated. We had a cash flow deficit in August of last year. And so a decision was made to take $500,000 from the tort liability fund to cover that cash flow deficit. So we debited cash and we credited, it's really not a loan, it was just a transfer. You can call it a loan or whatnot, but that was something that had to be paid back to the tort liability fund. So that was a one-time source. So that goes to what Mr. Ross is saying, is that, that wasn't a property tax inflow. That wasn't a fee that was generated. That was $500,000 that we had sitting in a separate account, and we used that money. Okay. The board said we're going to pay it back as soon as we can. And then, and by the way, we had a whole bunch of money sitting in an account in a CD at the exact same time on these windmill money that we got, the windfall that we got, which is on one time only. Okay. They decided to do it that way instead of take the CD money. I understand that. But then what I understood happened is we're done with 2025 now. And in 2026, they cashed in 750,000 or so of the windmill money and immediately took $500,000 of that money and paid back the tort liability fund, correct?
correct.
Okay, so that windmill money happened in 2026 and the payback to the tort liability happened in 2026. What happened in 2025 is that we took $500,000 to cover. And so just take the windmill money and forget about it when you're talking about 2025. So what you have to do is you have to take the actual revenues and then add in that $500,000 from the tort liability fund and then compare that to all of our expenses and see where we are. And that should be really simple math. It's posted now, just for my own amusement, because I am a taxpayer like everybody else. I'm gonna go and crank the numbers for my own personal benefit. But I hopefully that simplified it a little bit as to what was going on. And by the way, government accounting standards use debit and credits just like the rest of the world. And there are financial statements, they're not the auditor's financial statements. All they're doing is coming in, and if they feel that there's tweaks that need to be made, but at the end of the day, the only opinion that they are offering is that our financial statements present fairly what actually happened.
So, Kim, I'll use this example. We did an upgrade a few years ago for $100,000 of IT. But we made payments against that $100,000 because that's the arrangement we had. So what's the expense? The $100,000 of hardware that we bought, or the payments that we make against the $100,000 throughout the year?
On a budget perspective, you're gonna have that expense every month of what that expense is. But IT equipment would actually be an asset.
Right.
And so that's a separate item on your general ledger. I think we're confusing general ledger and cash register, your register. And I think that's what happens often is your general ledger is what tracks all of that. This is what our loan is. This is what our assets are. All that stuff stays over here. But what I think most people in the general public don't, and I'm speaking very widely, so a lot of people understand it. I'm just saying, in general, most people don't keep a general ledger at home. They keep a cash register. They keep their checkbook, if anybody even does it anymore. I don't know how people don't, but that's what people are looking at. What money do I have? Businesses and such need to understand that general ledger side, which shows that asset, that $100,000, and that's your asset. And there will be an asset and a liability to offset each other would be the loan. So, I mean, I don't think either one of us is right or wrong. I'm just trying to clarify for people that general ledger, cash are just two very different things. But when you're writing that check out each month, that is still an expense to people.
Okay.
In my, and all the accounting stuff I've done in years, but that's how I do that.
So I just want to be clear that if we have to borrow money in order to pay for the expenses and bills that are put before us, I feel, yes, there's definitely a cash flow issue because we didn't have the cash to pay the bills. But if we're not going to have the revenue in to pay that loan back by the end of the fiscal year, then that means that we didn't have the revenue to support the expenses that we have.
I get what you're saying.
Okay. So when I say that there's a deficit, I'm just saying that we did not receive the revenue, not that we didn't have cash, because I know that was one thing, like on the ambulance side, the ambulance, when they did their budget, they had a negative amount there. We have a negative amount. We have a deficit budget, but we have the cash to get us through this. But we couldn't justify that we were going to have the revenue to support the expenses, even on the budget that we passed for 2026. But we put in there that we were going to take the $900,000 in CDs. So when I talk about a deficit, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we don't have the revenues coming in order to pay the expenses that I see that are being paid out. And that's where I saw that we had an issue. There was anticipated revenues that were put in the 2025 budget that did not materialize, but we had the expenses there. We just didn't get the revenue in. That's why we had to borrow the money. So that was what I saw that was going to happen in 2025. That's what I believe the 2025 report out there on the website shows, is that we didn't receive the revenue that was anticipated in that budget. And that's where I think that there was definitely a deficit based off of what we had to borrow in order to pay the bills. So.
And I think if anybody, if the general public is confused, it's a very hard thing to understand, I think. And people use different words and phrases. But adding to the confusion would be if anyone leaves here and and gives people the impression this is just a cash flow problem. Because as I remember things, in December of 25, which was the month I became chairman, Scott, 24, thank you. Thank you very much. 24. Scott, for fiscal year 25, Scott and I went to the bank and signed an anticipation note. And Scott, please tell me if I'm wrong, but as I remember, that was in December,
It was.
the first month of our fiscal year. It wasn't, we were 3/4 of the way through the year and didn't have enough money to get through. It was the first month of our fiscal year. So, and I mean, I don't normally put my name on something that says you're borrowing $1 million or something. Never done that in my life. But I did that day with Scott. We got that money and we were using it to pay our bills. And yes, there are cash flow issues that we have to manage every year. But then before fiscal year 25 was done, we had to borrow that money from the tort liability fund. So, we had all of that money from the bank managing the cash flow. We still had to borrow $500,000 to make payroll. And the worst problem with that is that tort liability fund was a one-time amount of money we were borrowing. We were able to pay it back with the windmill funds, which was one-time money, which is now gone. Payroll is not a one-time expense. We've still got that expense and it keeps growing. So it's what we're facing now, which I think is the real issue, and trying not to confuse people any more than necessary. Let the auditors resolve what they believe happened in 25. We've got to think through, well, how are we going to get through 26? And then what's going to be our budget for 27? And if somebody's aware of another pot of one-time money that we can use to cover expenses, please speak up. I'd love to find we've got a pot of gold somewhere that we can use, but I don't know where it's coming from this time. So to me, the main thing is to stay focused on what's happening right now. And I used to respond to FOIAs in my old job. Maybe Walker, you disagree that this is a way to handle it, but if people are really asking for what the 25 deficit was, I don't think it's wrong to just say to them, the audit has not begun yet. We don't have that answer right now.
I think also as elected officials, you guys asked us to work on our budgets, and I'm very thankful that we're starting early, but getting a formal deficit number for us or something within a margin of error is critical, so we know what to ask for. So asking about pots of money right now, or you ended 2025 with that Fund 18 that was not budgeted, that was the health insurance clearing account with $311,000 in it. So there was $300,000 sitting there that could have been used for something different, that was just sitting there waiting to pay a bill for January because that November bill had already been paid. So that's why I'm saying it's cash flow and cash management, because funds are being taken from general funds and put maybe in off-chart accounts to hold them. And I understand why Scott does that. I totally get it. You don't want the general fund to go through it, and it's health insurance, but it's still general fund money. It's money that departments are paying to pay that health insurance bill, and that health insurance bill is general fund. And this is just sitting in an account, not doing anything, waiting for 30, 40 days to pay the bill. So when you're looking at all that cash management's the kicker. We could have borrowed that 300 and some thousand at the end of the year, to pay different things instead of borrowing the anticipation. But I'll tell you, my first day in office, we were borrowing the anticipation note. If you go back in board minutes, it's happened a month earlier consistently, but our audit told us from 2022 that we ended with a surplus of $700,000. So we even borrowed the anticipation note loan the first day of that year too. So how are we borrowing it the first day of 22 and ending with the surplus? Like, those are the questions that I have. And that's why I'm saying it's cash management, because it's not that anything nefarious is going on. It's just we're not utilizing the resources that we have here and instead screaming a deficit when the cash is probably sitting here to be used.
So, to that response, and Scott and I just talked about that, what concerns me by looking at bank statements and amounts of money that are sitting in accounts compared to the statements and the profit and loss and expenses is, there was supposed to be $50,000 moved out of the general fund under managed IT and put in our GIS account. Well, the 50,000 sitting in the general fund right now, so you would make the argument potentially that, hey, we've got $50,000 of cash we could be using. Well, now if you use that cash for something else, then how am I supposed to do my GIS because it hadn't been moved correctly? And the same thing would be as we're trying to get better in depositing money for our health insurance. Well, that deposit goes in every pay. So there could be cash sitting in there, but yet we're still going to have a bill for the whole month come later. We can't be looking at cash sitting in checking accounts or balances and saying that money's there to use when we can't arbitrarily say we don't know what bills that money's there for.
Our health insurance averages $150,000 a month. This is $311,000 at the end of the year. There's two premiums worth in there. That's mismanagement.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go
So
with,
you're saying that money's not needed for health insurance?
It is.
It will be, but we weren't paying that bill till January.
Used.
In January. So you could have used it, but you were also taking those premiums out. So you were going to have more money from employees that was going to be sitting there, because how it works is you pay your 2 bills in November, you don't have a payment in December, and then you get your January, February bill in January. So we'd already paid that by the time the ending balance had occurred. So you still had $311,000.
so at the end of what month are we talking about? We have
This is the end of fiscal year 25.
at the end of fiscal year 25, there was $311,000 sitting in the Fund 18.
Yes.
Okay,
So we went down 40,000.
okay. So first of all, I think we'll all agree that Fund 18 never even showed up on the budget. But then,
Budgeted, yeah,
yeah,
so a
so,
budgeted fund.
yeah, well, okay. Secondly, I'm sorry, but I don't know how accurate this $311,000 really is.
Agreed, that's our question.
And so what's on a statement that's printed out of our accounting system and what's actually sitting in a bank account, I think we all can agree have sometimes been different numbers.
How do we get them the same?
Well, that would have to do with making sure that everything is being reconciled as we go along.
The double entering back and balancing back, right? Like, so you have the front entry and then you have the back entry. The double entry.
There was a piece missing that accumulated over $26 million that the expenses weren't there.
Well, yeah, so those entries weren't being done. We talked about that. The treasurer's office wasn't making any entries, which, we can work on, but this has nothing to do with payroll. This is not a fund that payroll ever touched. This fund right here has zero to do with payroll.
Okay,
So this would have just been entry. So then it's still, so this should be very easy to reconcile. It should only have 12 transactions a year. Or 11, actually.
possibly.
So I guess my question is, I don't see bank statements. I only can go off this. I can only go off reports. I don't have access to the bank statements on every fund. So if I'm going through looking at these, trying to make sense, how are we all supposed to know that the bank statements don't match these if this is what's being sent to us every month as our formal report for what we should go off of? And you're saying that we really can't go off this because we know it doesn't match the bank statements.
You used to get the fund status reports until we went to Paycom. And after that, it ended. And it was balanced. It had everything in it. It had the CDs listed in all of them. It had all of it.
Well,
And
actually, I'm going to jump ahead here because one of the parts after this was the announced bank statements were sent to all board members. Did you get a copy of the bank statement?
For April,
For-
yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, for March.
I'm sorry, for
So, okay, do you believe when you were looking there that that Fund 18 bank statement that we just talked about had 200,000 sitting in it?
It's
Or-
closed.
So we have nothing sitting in
There's
it.
nothing in it.
but it's still having transactions here.
Well, why it's having transactions there.
I was gonna say, I should think we were using Fund 18 at all.
Okay,
We moved it to income tax clearing.
so you moved 300, do you know how much you moved at the end of the year?
No, you spend it
Who spent it?
whenever you paid your health insurance.
So did that just affect the cash part, if that's the GL part? Is that report that you're
That's
looking at,
why
GL?
it's throwing something there now.
If nobody made an entry into the GL portion, it would stay the same.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just an entry that needs to be made. I mean, it's not
Health
that.
insurance, not.
Yeah, it does. No, Fund 18 doesn't have anything to do with payroll. If it did, we wouldn't have shut it down, I think, right?
I think truthfully, we should have stuck with Fund 18, so all the health insurance is completely separated and not locked up into the income tax clearing account.
Well, what,
And then everything for health insurance be paid directly out of it. But
and,
I think it accomplished what I wanted, is keeping it separate from the general fund to put it in the income tax clearing.
Can you add it to your next budget? Make it an actual budgeted, put it to your
I
summary
think it'd be
report,
cleaner if we did.
you know what I mean? Can you add that?
well, I mean,
And then that solves some of that issue.
and here's what we're running into, I believe. You shouldn't need 70 some odd accounts. I mean, if you had an income tax clearing account and could dump it all in there and count on your accounting system to keep track of it all, you could have one checking account for that stuff. The problem that we run into, and what I'm kind of hearing, is that people's gonna look at that checking account and say, hey, we've got $300,000, we've got $500,000 sitting there, we can go ahead and pay this and this and this. Well, if it's not being tracked properly in the accounting system, we have a problem. So I think that's in part, maybe what happened is they said, well, let's start putting some money in this account. So that way we know it's only for this. Let's start putting money in this account, so we know it's only for this. And I mean, it just spread everything around like that. But then you run into these situations where, well, this bank account's got this amount of money. It should only have that amount of money in it for a reason. I don't think that the county is sitting there on hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash for no reason. It should have been there for something. Now, one of the things that we talked about, we like our flex account. We moved money out of our flex account because it should have been paid out. You know, that was money to be reimbursed, had been held out of payroll, put into a flex account, and should have been being reimbursed to the individuals. I'm almost certain those individuals got reimbursed, but where the hell did the money come from? It didn't come out of the flex account, so it must have came out of the general fund, or it must have came out of something else. So therefore, and that would have been a payroll issue. So where was money being paid for expenses and accounts that were arbitrarily set aside for specific purposes? So we have a problem, and I think we're getting very close to trying to identify it, try and pick away at it to get a little clearer direction on where we need to go. So as these things continue to come up, I'm trying to make mental notes to say, I'll look into this, but I finally got my computer to come on. And even though we have departments as 000, the $750,000 of transfer in is in 001011, which is administration, and it's labeled as a revenue. So it says transfer in, but the line item is still a revenue. So
We budgeted it for as revenue.
what's that?
We budgeted it as revenue.
Well, actually, yeah, we did. Well, it's not really budgeted as revenue. It's actually at the bottom of that page 2 of our budget as a $900,000 of transfer in money.
Yeah.
But when we're pulling this report doesn't go off of our budget sheet or our spreadsheet for our budget. This report, and that was the other reason why I wanted to try and work with CIC's budgeting module. So that way, in my mind, it would have matched. Whatever we were putting in as our budget in our CIC system should have matched that module and not what the spreadsheet is that's out there. But we didn't get anywhere with that, so I went in and rebuilt the spreadsheet and kept doing it the way we had been. But I'm telling you, in CIC, we have budgeted as revenue, though it's labeled transfer in, of $900,000.
So transfers are all gonna be zeros in the middle. So as from a GL standpoint, if you're gonna do a transfer, you don't want to label it as Fund 11 because that's your revenue fund. You want to label it as like 0110000 transfer in. And that's how CIC recognizes transfers in because it doesn't have a department to tag that to. So any transfers you budget as a 000.
I hear what you're saying, but that's not what happened.
No, and I understand that. I'm just saying, I think those are things, and, you know, these are the same questions that I had the first day that I walked in office, because none of it made sense to me either. You know, we've come a long way trying to ask these questions, but, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff that really is hard to understand.
But this is not departmental. So the loan, the anticipation loan, that's actually labeled as loan proceeds. That's not a transfer in. It shows up under 001 general fund, but then department is 000.
Yeah.
But it still shows up as revenue.
It's a transfer in, it should show up as a transfer in. That's the whole point of labeling it. It's the same.
But as we just pointed out, your choices are revenue and expense, or I mean, yeah, revenue and expenditures. You have to call it something. It's either a revenue or an expense.
Which is, I think, what Tim was getting at, for the sake of trying to clean this up, you know, that's how we're gonna look at that, which I understand. Then we need to look at it that way, which is what these numbers are showing us, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that's where I'm saying, when you go down the line, you've got expense, revenue, and then all of these, I mean, that's how CIC has them labeled, either as a revenue or an expense. And which is frustrating the hell out of me is that I don't have anything out there that says liability or asset. I don't have a balance sheet that could say, here's where a loan is and that's a liability, or here's where all of our buildings are and that's
you can
that.
add encumbrances.
We don't have that part of the program.
Okay, well, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, all I see is a P&L. I see a profit and loss or an income and revenue. So we have to say, when we're getting money in, we're calling it a revenue, whether we're borrowing it, whether somebody gifted it to us, whatever it is, we're calling that a revenue. And when we pay a payment out, whether it's for a bill or whether it's a payment towards a loan or whatever else, we're calling that an expense. So we have to have the revenues balance against our expenses, and that just hasn't happened. So that's, I'm sorry if we're making this a full circle, but I'm telling you, I put this thing in a spreadsheet so many freaking times, and I understand that people can get these reports and look at them and say, what the heck? There's a bunch of adding and subtracting you had to add back in. I say you have to add in that subtract that $355,000 of loan proceeds from this revenue, because it's not a revenue. We didn't earn $355,000 in fees. We borrowed money. So now it will be replaced as tax revenue, because once we get our tax revenue in, then it will pay off that loan. So really that $355,000 could be considered revenue early from the taxes we'll eventually get. So that's what's fixing our cash flow problem. We have to borrow the money to have the cash in order to pay the expenses that are due now for taxes we're going to collect later. But you can't count them both as revenues. They overlap.
I really appreciate the discussion, Derek. I really do. And so I think the other question I have is, do you think it would benefit us to look for a new financial software? I know that there's issues with accrual methods, that we have to pay auditors a lot of money to turn our books into accrual. There are like QuickBooks has a button that you can bounce back and forth between cash and accrual, and it should update all of that. Do we think, I mean, I personally believe that an updated financial system would benefit us and show clear picture to elected officials, to the public. If we're saying that we just can't trust this, and I mean, I am someone that you know, needs to understand this, and quite frankly, I've spent 7.5 years trying to look at it, and even before we switched payroll systems, we still didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so, having said that, I think the writing's on the wall. It might be time to look for something that actually provides the needs that we are looking for.
Before software ever came about, it was all done on paper.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the software is that's being used. It's the input. I mean, it's the garbage in, garbage out. We need to figure out a better way to use what we have available. And I'll tell you honestly, I still believe we have a deficit. We have more expenses than we do revenue. So going out there and trying to say, let's try and get a different accounting software that's going to cost whatever it is not going to fix our deficit. It's not going to fix the 300,000, 500,000, 200, whatever the number is. is not going to fix and create more revenue for us, nor is it going to get rid of the expenses that we have as a problem. So therefore, switching software does not take care of the immediate need of the county. And I'm just trying to work with what I've got. And as I said, I don't trust, I mean, I don't have access to CIC, contrary to what I think some people have said. I get a spreadsheet from our treasurer and I load the spreadsheet into here and I manipulate that. I do my filters, I do my formulas, and I do all of that off of raw data that's given to me. It's not something I have personal access to. I cannot get into the CIC system. I cannot get into any of the accounting systems of the county. I have to rely on that information being given to me, and then I take that data and manipulate it. So therefore, that's where I said I'm working at the end of April, because that's all I have to work with right now. I don't get a day-to-day, up-to-date information. I only can get what's given to me. So that's what I was saying at the moment right now, at the end of April, we have a surplus, if you will, based off of revenues received that we'll call revenues, we'll call it cash, based off of cash received either from income or from loans. We have more cash than we have in expenses, which is a good thing, and we should be able to do our cash flow. But that is not all revenue. That was not all income. Therefore, we still have a problem. We don't have enough income coming in for expenses. And going back to what we did when we passed our budget, we capped out what we can get from the taxpayers out of their budget or out of the levy for what can be collected for the general fund. So now we have to start working on trying to dwindle down the expense side of it. And that's what we're working on right now. So I hope this has been helpful. And if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of just keep going through and maybe something else will get answered or not. But and you guys have anything to add? I didn't want to talk about water. Okay. All right. So
Thank you, Derek. Thank you.
okay. Yeah. So announced bank statements, we already did that. Review proposed 2026 amendments. So I have two amendments like we did last month. One is the GIS IT, and that particular situation was my own fault, but there was, we have $110,000 of revenue, 50,000 coming from managed IT, 60,000 coming from GIS. So we have 110,000 in revenue. I actually, when I did it all, we had an $11,803 surplus that ended up in the budget, and I hadn't allocated any money into information technology. So there's a couple of things going on right now with Scott's number one, going to take care of transferring the 50,000 into the managed or into GIS so we can get our DevNet bill paid correctly. And then also there are some bills that have been being paid out for, I think, Tigerhawk that should really be under information technology, but had not. So we're going to get that cleaned up. But anyway, I have a proposal to basically move $11,803 from Fund 037 GIS from budgeted surplus to line item 037096577 information technology for the purposes of correcting an omission of the appropriation of funds during the initial budget process. This amendment utilizes full amount of revenue appropriated for the additional budget adopted and does not require additional revenue from the county. This transfer is administrative in nature and does not change purposes, eligibility, or use of funds, but solely corrects the classification of expenditures. That all makes sense? Okay, so I would entertain a motion from somebody to make that. Lance? A second? Yeah, done. All right, any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. And that motion passed. The second
And
one,
so I need these on the full agenda.
right, so because the board still needs to pass them. And I think that also needs to be clarified too. These are amendments. They're just being presented to finance. They're being looked at and approved by finance, but the full board still has to approve them. So they'll go before the full board to where the full board may or may not approve it. So.
And this is a wash, right? There's no additional.
Right, because it was taken out of, the surplus. So I can show you, but if you look at the line, if you look.
I'm just saying that we're not amending the budget to spend more.
No, that's where I said, yeah, no. And then the same thing, here on the county clerk. We had talked about this at the last meeting and we would, discuss this, with our county clerk. I have a motion in the amount of $89,223 to be moved from Fund 1, General Fund, from line item 001-008-5666, which is election salaries and expenses, to line item 001-008-5503, which is office personnel, for the purpose of correcting a line item classification error as identified through audit review and in coordination with the county clerk to properly reflect eligible personnel expenses with no change to the total appropriation of the fund. So I want to be very clear about that, is that the original budget was $400,000 for the clerk's office. The revised budget is still the same $400,000. We're not changing, adding, paying any more anywhere. We're just putting a number from one category into the other category. The transfer is administrative in nature and does not change the purpose, eligibility, or use of the funds, but solely corrects the classification of expenditures. This is the same type of transaction and amendment that was made last month for the motor fuel tax and was separated out of a lump sum of the motor fuel tax. And now we've moved over, I think it was $300,000 in personnel. So
What all makes up that number?
the 89 or the 400,000?
The 89.
The 89,000 is basically annualizing, the total payroll. And then, looking at what's currently in your personnel and then taking the difference that was missing and taking it out of the election line and putting it into the personnel.
Okay.
So I think your total personnel budget, was originally at 135,530 and now will be 224,753.
Okay, do you know if that includes any election support staff that's not judges?
That would be based off of your payroll
Right.
that you're paying people. So are you talking about,
Here's what I'm getting at. I wasn't asked about that number.
okay,
So I think as we left last month's meeting, you were gonna email me and we were gonna discuss the amendment. That never happened.
okay,
This is new to me. So I'm not willing to like endorse that at all at this point until I look at the numbers. And I'm more than willing to, but I want to make sure that it doesn't include my election support staff. And so if that's the case, then I'd like to at least look at that and then we can reconvene next month. I mean, I think you can go on with that, but since I didn't verify the numbers, I'm not gonna attest to it until I have a chance to look at it.
what do you define as election support staff? Is it somebody on your payroll or not on your payroll?
So it could be, it could not be. It could be somebody that comes in that works for a different office that we would pay through payroll from the county clerk's office. It could be somebody that's gonna work election night that might work in Bryce's office that I'm gonna have to pay out of elections, even though they're still a county employee. So there's various caveats to that. I get where you're going with it and I appreciate it and I'm more than willing to do it. Since I wasn't approached about this before today, and I know that you were gonna send me an email and I get it, we get busy. I wanna make sure that I have time to look at it and verify those numbers. Cause I think I know what I'd be looking at and looking for, if possible.
Okay. Well, that's fine. So there were two categories. You have your personnel and then what was being put in election lines. And I just basically took, that seemed to be pretty consistent per pay. So I was just adding those two together times 24.
Okay,
And then, but I did notice that for the election period here, there was more paid out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you paid overtime, if you,
there's a lot of Saturdays, overtime,
Okay.
you'll have holiday pay come the November election.
so that's another, potential issue of,
That's what I'm saying. That's what
Yeah.
I'm getting at.
But, and this 224,000 then ended up being higher.
No, it shouldn't be. I think I budgeted that correctly. But what I'm getting at basically is I can't validate that number because I wasn't asked to look into it at this point, but I for sure will.
Okay.
And I mean, I just want to make sure that I know, because, since we're the ones that schedule, we know exactly how it works. It's probably best if I'm involved in it.
Okay. Well, I would still entertain the motion to get it to the board, and then if you can get us what the number is, and then we can change it so we can be moving forward with, we'll just correct the number at the board meeting on whatever this 89 is. It needs to be something different. Because again, and I want to make sure everybody's clear here, you're not asking for more money.
No.
I mean, it's still the $400,000. It's just a matter of what bucket it's coming out of.
Right.
So, yeah, we're still budgeting. It's not an increase. It's not giving people raises or anything like that. We're still working with the same $400,000. It's just where that number needs to be.
There's also other situations involved in that because I turn my budget into State Board of Elections once the budget's passed
Mhm.
and they can look at grants and take them at a cumulative value. So there's more consequences potentially to this than just switching something from one line to another, especially when you're coming for elections. And what I don't want is I don't want to have an unintended consequence for a grant or something just because we're hastily moving something. I understand, and I even submitted you my new budget that has that broken out.
So,
So I totally am on board. I just want to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that. So I respectfully ask that I can have a month to look into it, make sure, talk to State Board of Election, and then we can move forward next month if you don't mind going and putting on the agenda.
table this for the
I appreciate that.
okay. Moving on, review of
But you
the,
did vote on the IT and you want that on the May agenda.
right. So we got the IT one. Review progress, for the 2027. I received most departments' proposed 2027 budgets, yesterday. So I've been accumulating, putting it all together. I don't have anything to present, of course, tonight. I appreciate everybody getting the information in this quickly as they did. I actually reached out to Kim on a couple of things, and I think it's just I'm glad that we're starting this sooner and that we can have these discussions. So anyone that hasn't, or any departments that haven't submitted their budgets, if you could get them to me here in the near future, that would be helpful. And then what I have intended on doing is then going back and sharing that spreadsheet like I did last year, so everybody can kind of follow along and see what we're working on and see how things are progressing. So that's the wish list. All right, moving on to elected official salaries, discussion of proposal for full board for consideration. Walker had an opinion for how to handle the situation with the circuit clerk. I think that people may recall that the former resolution included the circuit clerk in that resolution. And it was determined that the circuit clerk should not have been part of that resolution because that election cycle is a different cycle. So the recommendation from our state's attorney was to basically leave everything the way it is currently right now for our circuit clerk for the next 2 years, with the idea in spring of 2028 to then correct the salary accordingly for the 2028 election. Saying that correctly, I think.
For the 2029 through 2020, 2033 fiscal year. So that's
Fiscal years.
correct as a bad verb.
So it, yeah, it's
To adjust or whatever. But I mean,
so it's the 2029 fiscal year, but I'm thinking it takes effect December 1st of 28.
Yeah.
So,
Through fiscal year,
so it would be 6 years from, so,
32.
well, 2 years from right now, you're gonna want to do a resolution
right, or the 4-year cycle
for
for,
the circuit clerk.
right. One thing I forgot to,
And just to follow up on that, when we say nothing changes, salary, I don't even know if you can get a stipend from that. No, okay, so salary and health insurance stay, no changes.
okay. And as it pertains to health insurance, it just says that it's offered. So I don't know how I think what's happened in the past is that it's just been what everybody else does, but as we're starting to realize as we go through union negotiations and so forth, there is potentially going to be multiple different situations to where different employees may be paying different amounts for the same coverage. So,
My point is though, that you can't change that. Because you would be changing his compensation during his term.
Okay,
So you can't change it, even though it's as offered. It's whatever he's been getting paid or compensated for that. You can't change it. So
okay.
you might wanna, for the future, change that language.
So do we owe him a refund for all of the increases that we've had held out of his check as we've increased to what the employees have? It seems to me, because we have changed what his deductions have been in the past.
So that's a good question. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, of course, all the elected officials have gone along with whatever the payroll deducted amounts are. So it's never been a flat amount to where it's only going to be $100 during your entire 4 years. It's changed as.
I'll have to go back to Mr. Bourne's memo that I shared with him.
Okay.
Because he laid it all out, and from what I read, you can't change the compensation.
And I don't disagree, and I read that same language too, but what we should do and what we have done has sometimes been two different things. So.
No, agreed, and that's the problem.
Yeah, so if you could get some clarification on that, that would be greatly appreciated.
I'm not clear on what you're saying there, Derek. You're saying that more has come out of my check for insurance?
If you look at when you took office, and we'll say $100 per pay was coming out. Well, then as the years have gone on, we adjust and say, well, now it's 105 or 110. If we go with the idea that we can't change the compensation, then yeah, maybe you should have stayed at $100 per. So that's, I'm just going by, you heard it along with what I heard it. So I just asked the question.
I mean, when you're saying the pay has to stay the same, then I would agree with what.
Well, the magic words and, and again, that was in Mr. Bourne's memo. He thoroughly researched it. It's compensation and not. Once you set the compensation, it cannot change one way or the other.
And what, so we'll go a different direction with that. And what was just posted out there online by the clerk. Our insurance costs has continued to go up. So therefore, if your employee only coverage gross is $1,000, that's $12,000 of compensation. Now, if we started, now that the employee rate goes up to 1,100, we should probably keep you at 1,000. So therefore the increase maybe should have come off of your check. Because if compensation is the insurance at that flat 1,000, and that's what it was at the time, and insurance rates continue to go up, we're increasing your compensation based off of the benefit that you're getting because of the increased rates. So I know I'm shaking my head too, but that can go both ways.
I think maybe rather than speculate, though, I think Walker
He's not looking.
needs to go back and look, because the last language I read in the resolution that we passed, that you shouldn't have been in, apparently. It said, insurance would be equivalent to employee.
Right.
That's too simple. The language was more than that, but to employees.
Right.
So if you take that at face value, then what he was getting and contributing.
No, I agree. The question is, it doesn't square with what Mr. Bourne researched. So.
Right. And I'm going by when we say compensation based off of the spreadsheet that's out there, it shows everything to say, here's what gross compensation is. It includes FICA, Medicare, all that fun stuff in there. So if we're supposed to keep that number based off of whatever it is, then that would be increased compensation if we continue to pay more towards the insurance. So, but we're just trying to get build up into the tech. We'll leave it at that. But we still have on the table that we need to discuss salaries at least.
Well, compensation.
Compensation.
Well,
Yeah.
No, that's That's what the statute says. I don't have Mr. Bourne's memo in front of me. I didn't know it was gonna evolve into a sticky wicket.
I don't think anybody is disagreeing that compensation includes the insurance coverage.
And it includes stipends.
Yes.
And whatever else you want to throw in there.
And the resolution we've used in the past specifies salaries, stipends, and insurance.
Right. But, again, we go to the broad definition of compensation per the spreadsheet. That includes IMRF contributions. That includes social security contributions. We're not putting that in this resolution. That's why I was trying to make sure that,
No, I get it. I get it. So
well, but if you believe that we should be, then that, I mean, I'll listen to the
I
direction.
don't know what I believe without going back and looking at it.
Okay, well,
But I will have that before Tuesday because it has to be done before June 1st.
yes,
About Wednesday.
yeah, Wednesday.
Wednesday's the meeting.
I thought the meeting was Tuesday.
It's been,
Wednesday.
it's been back in, I heard it Tuesday once, but then when I went and looked online and I went back through the minutes, it says Wednesday.
Well, I'll be a day early then.
So,
That'll be a day earlier than a day late.
But Walker, I think I misspoke during the meeting at one point and said Tuesday, so I may have confused things.
No big.
But
You
like, when I looked at Natalie's minutes from the meeting where we rescheduled it, she had Wednesday.
That was Catherine.
Catherine,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, because I think I got confused. too
Your
on it when
office,
I was looking
But
at it.
she's got it Wednesday.
Either way, you'll have an answer. before
May
you-
27th.
you asked about if you do it on Tuesday. And
Yeah, we
there was
talked
more
about
no's
that.
than there was yes.
Yeah.
So then you went to Wednesday and that's when you finally decided.
Yeah.
Approve it out of committee. We gotta make an adjustment before at the board meeting. We just.
well, I believe the board gave some direction at the last meeting was for finance to present something. So,
The motion is present the resolution is. And
we might want to say what the resolution is before.
as far as how the compensation works or the amounts.
The,
Because all I did before, for the last board meeting, was just use the previous resolution, but I left everything blank. Nothing was filled in on salary increases, nothing was filled in about the insurance. I think I did leave the stipend that come from the state, because those are set.
So what I have for this resolution is the 60,416 for 26 through 29. Adjusting the assessor to 63,916 because that position's been short $1,500 compared to the other elected officials. When you take into consideration that there's a $6,500 stipend that comes from the state for
You can't
the,
consider that.
Can't
You
consider it.
cannot consider that. You can't even talk about it.
well, I just did.
I know, it's on camera.
It's in the resolution.
It's statute is very clear on that, that you cannot even consider that when you're looking at compensation and comparing things.
Well, anyway, I was trying to get all elected officials to have a net take home of the same amount. So that,
Including our stipends from the state
including the stipends to the state. And so
that are to be considered. So if we're looking at a net, as far as you're concerned, then we would all be at the same amount.
if I were looking at a net, as far as I'm concerned, then I would say that 3 positions get a larger stipend than 1 does. So.
Are you talking county stipend or state stipend?
State.
Yeah, we didn't put any, or I don't have any county stipends in here. So,
I didn't know we had one.
what's that?
Yeah, I get 2. I get one for IMRF and one for risk manager.
Oh, well,
So, yeah,
And
those,
you're saying, are you gonna you're taking those away?
so,
Who's gonna do the risk management and IMRF?
I know it's not gonna be a board member, so
Well, I'm
somebody,
just saying, so when you know, because you have to pay somebody to do that, right? So you'll have to appoint your IMRF representative and all of that stuff.
I don't think it necessarily changes the duties, and I'm not trying to state a position on this or anything, but I don't know that at this time we're talking about changing anyone's duties.
You're just removing money. You want to keep the work the same, but just take the money away.
Wow.
Is that,
Let you guys talk about that, but
did somebody want to answer that from the board?
Sounds like.
yeah,
And that's what you intend to do? That's what you think you should do?
in light of what's going on in the county and its finances, yes.
Okay, so let me give you this scenario. So when we got rid of the unemployment insurance company that handled things, we received an unemployment claim, okay? That has taken me individually 7 hours at this point, 2 days. The hearing is now postponed. We actually lost. We have to appeal it. It's gonna be at least 20 more hours of work for something that really has nothing to do with us. That's more work that Catherine and I have to put in to handle this, that you guys were paying somebody else to do, and you're gonna have us do the same, but decrease the money? Yeah. That's interesting.
The public service. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
the $50 a month I get for all the hours I put into, it's
That's
a
not the same.
lot of.
Yeah,
That's not the same.
Well,
There's a lot of
I
duties.
had your job, Derek. Don't give me that.
okay.
I had your job.
What about the money you spent for an attorney for the unions? Where you
Yeah.
at on your budget on that?
That's a great question. So when that came up, it was given to our state's attorney, and he had recused himself from taking that position of being the union attorney.
What? I beg your pardon.
You don't remember that?
Oh, you don't remember that.
Okay.
I offered my services to do it all, and you guys didn't want me to do it. It said November 4th. It's all on video. What are you talking about?
What?
And then when you decided to go with somebody else, which is fine, that's your decision. I said, I'm out of it. You don't want me involved? The chair made the comment that I didn't have the proper mindset for it.
I understood you said that you didn't want to be accused of having a conflict. So
No, I never said that. You're the ones who said that I had the conflict. And I explained to you that I have no conflict. I'm the attorney. You guys make the decision. You're my client. I have an ethical duty to do and negotiate what you want. And at the end of the day, you make the decision. This is a bizarre conversation, Derek. I was ready, willing, and able. I even asked anybody in there who's negotiated labor union contracts before. I raised my hand because I have before. Frank McCartney, on behalf of the county, when he was state's attorney, negotiated union contracts. There's absolutely no conflict for the state's attorney to negotiate a union contract, but you guys decided that you didn't want me to do it. So don't turn it back on me and say that, oh, we had to hire outside counsel because Walker wouldn't do it. No, that is a false, well, as Billy Martin once said, that's a false lie. But no, that's false. That is a false narrative, Derek, and you know it. I mean, this is bizarre, and you know it. And then once you made the decision, which is your decision, and I made that perfectly clear, it's your decision, fine. But you made it perfectly clear, and the chair did, that they didn't want me involved because, quote, I had said nice things about some employees, close quote. Fine. And so I said, I'm out of it. You've hired outside counsel. They're handling it. I'm out.
Okay.
That was your decision, not mine.
So the second part of the decision was that Mr. Barrowman made a motion to have you choose which firm to go with.
Correct, because you decided that you wanted to go with a firm.
Okay.
And nobody wanted to make the decision, and that's fine. I was fine with that too, because I have experience with both firms. I know what they are. And I thought that Ms. Bobar was the superior choice to Heil Royster.
Okay. So,
And I've said nothing bad about Ms. Bobar. I thought, in the meetings I've been in, she's been outstanding.
excellent. So we budgeted $15,000 for outside counsel, which we had used outside counsel in the past. But it was in the budget, and we've gone over. Now, what I also understand is that what we initially potentially went over at the end of March was an accurate number. It appeared that we may have paid more than we were supposed to and actually got a refund.
Yeah, they double billed. So they asked if they wanted us to credit it or if we wanted the money back, and we said we want the money back.
So where we're at right now to, I think, the end of April is about $18,000. And I feel that we've definitely made some headway on cleaning up the contracts that were out there, getting them more detailed, specifically as it pertains to health insurance.
What changes were made in the union contract?
You'd have to look at it. and see.
We have
Okay, then what changes were made?
just the compensation and health insurance. Nothing else, no other language. See, that's what we asked, and I think I asked last month. We have problems with the accrual methods in those contracts because some say calendar year, some say anniversary date, and they're awarded at different times. So we asked that if you guys were making contract changes, to please let Catherine and I know so we can send you our list of everything that doesn't match as we try to build the rules out for clocking in and out that will, do the right thing that the software needs. And I believe the response that I received was, that's a can of worms we're not opening. We're only talking about health insurance and we're only talking about compensation. We're not touching anything else.
Okay.
Is that the case?
Well, so first of all, let's be extremely clear that I'm talking about the ambulance contract.
Right. And we didn't see anything else that changed outside of compensation and insurance.
I don't know that there was anything, well, there must have been numerous things that were discussed, but my point is that the contract had some very ambiguous language as it pertains to benefits and as what's actually coming up right now with elected officials and how we determine what health insurance really is or isn't and what it really costs or what it doesn't cost. As an example, in the sheriff's or the FOP contract, we're still pointing back to 2014 numbers and benefits, which haven't been done. There's nothing been addressed about HSA. So now we're just kind of basically going on with past practice. So, which kind of just throws the whole contract out as you think of it that way, because now we have to continue doing what we've always done, but wasn't what really was in the contract. So why the county chose to continue to do stuff contrary to what the contract said, I don't understand. But what we've done now, at least for the ambulance department, is we've got a very detailed contract that explicitly talks about those type of benefits, what's covered, how much is covered, and what's supposed to be followed. I forwarded an email to our attorney, which I think was actually questioned here recently, to say these concerns of yours that the clerk's office would brought up about how this might have an effect on what the contract may do, or what the contract may do for what your concern was. And I didn't receive a response back. So therefore.
Right, because they're not our counsel. Yeah.
Really? You don't think we hired them as our counsel to be for the FOP contract negotiations?
Not with my questions, no.
Okay. So the question that we have to ask the attorney that's negotiating on our behalf and how the language in the contract is not the counsel we should be talking
I
to.
haven't seen your email. I'll need to see your email.
Can we just stop, please?
These are
First
questions
of all,
that we
I
have.
understand, but first of all, I would be a little hesitant to say the only thing we changed in the ambulance contract was insurance and compensation, if that's the things that you said.
I don't believe they were, but yeah.
I don't think that's accurate. And I just want to correct that because, you stated that as if you thought it was a fact. Obviously, we're done with the ambulance contract. We're in the middle of negotiations with the FOP. We actually had a Zoom meeting just today. And I really don't think it's appropriate for us to be talking about what we might change or what we might not do or the status of the contract. And it doesn't have any bearing on this issue. So can we just go back to the elected salary?
Right, so just really quick,
Situation.
just for clarification, I need to look, if there is change in the union contract, because we're the ones that program it into Paycom, I need to know what those changes are, because the only thing I saw was compensation and insurance. So if there are different if there's different changes, I probably skipped them and that's possible. Please let me know what they are so I can go look at them to make sure that the rules that we set up in our system match what the contract says. That's what we do. We set the accruals in there. We build it based upon what the rules of the contract are. The only ones that I saw were those two.
And not everything is about payroll. So I'm just saying, I can't come up with an example right now, but in the back of my mind, I think there were some other things.
I'd like to take that a step further, that I'm not an attorney, therefore I don't believe I should be interpreting what the union contract is.
And you don't have to, just tell me what sections to look at. And just help me out and let me know where to look for the changes, because you guys did it, and I respect that. I just need to know where to look if I'm overlooking them. I would
Well-
greatly appreciate it.
You should have received,
I didn't, and I only saw changes in compensation and salaries, and that's what we're saying is different.
Okay.
So just let me know, please, where the other ones are, and that way I can at least make sure I'm correct. That's all I'm asking.
I'm just saying, when Sam met with the board members before we voted on it, I thought you received a red line version, but
No, I did not. Yeah, I did not. But what Bryce is saying is the board made the decision to spend $20,000+ on a labor attorney when we had one for free that we could have used.
and I personally think it was money well spent. I
Okay.
think she's doing a wonderful job.
But you don't want to pay
And
the
that-
elected
and that's-
officials.
And that's,
Yeah.
and I'm just on record that you do what you want to do, but don't spin it that you wouldn't have gotten that result if you had used me, okay? Because
I
that's
don't
what,
believe I said that.
well, that's the
I'm just saying it was
implication that I'm
money well
hearing.
spent.
That's the implication that I'm hearing.
And I do feel, from what Derek said before, my memory, and maybe I need to go back and look or read the summary, but my memory is you took exception when I suggested you might have a conflict
Yes, I.
and that you
exception.
refused to do it.
No, that is, no. It was
No.
after you made the decision to go with outside counsel that I said, I'm out. You've hired outside counsel, I'm not gonna muddy the waters, leave me out of it, and you have. And so that's fine, that's your decision. But since we got it started, just for the record, the ambulance union was going to, employees were going to leave their union in July of last year. And then the board started making changes at the last minute on health insurance. And they decided to stay with the union. And that's water over the dam. And I put up a lot of informations to you, which I'm not going to talk about because that's between us as attorneys and clients. But it could have been a completely different result, but
Well,
it is.
That's their decision.
Well,
of
yeah.
what they want to do.
Yeah, and they reacted to decisions that you guys made, but it's done, it's over with. And it's in the books, and I wish the best of luck to you on the FOP contract.
My point is, you guys are you're already over and you haven't even done the sheriff's side. And you want to take stipend away from her and remain the duties that she has to do. And you think that's okay? You think that's right?
I don't know why you're connecting the two. I mean, the board voted not to accept a bid that would have saved us, what, $90,000 on property and casualty.
He said, the condition that the county's in and the way the money is, you think that has no bearing on what you've done there. But you want to take it away from her and keep the duties in place. Is there a statute that says she has to do it?
Can we go back to the discussion about the resolution? Because I do feel that the board asked the finance committee to come in with a proposal. And maybe you guys feel you can't do that, but
Well,
I think we should.
yeah, I mean,
Focus on
that's a proposal I have. So
That's why I spoke up when you're trying to cut her throat. That's why I spoke up. To me, you're cutting her throat financially. Why do you
Yeah.
think you can take that money away and expect her to do it?
That's part of her job.
No,
No,
it isn't.
no, it's not.
It's not.
No.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it
He does it now. And
Well,
on
that's,
the same,
she gets paid to do it now.
the same premise that we can't change compensation during an elected term is we can't change the job duties either.
Okay, so you're gonna set that on the next board meeting, which is
Yeah.
Wednesday night. And if you make the decision to not pay her, who's gonna do it?
That's my question.
Okay, if it's not her job,
It's not.
then she needs to be doing that. Other than hours the county clerk is open. She needs to do it outside of that time frame.
I don't have hours, Dawn.
Huh?
I don't have hours.
Elected officials don't have hours.
Oh. Okay, well, the time frame that the office was open, that's what I was going at.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. But if you looked at what I sent you guys, I sent you all of the UCCI resolutions for the counties that passed the salaries, because this is what they're doing. Without raises, we're gonna be second to last in the state of Illinois. We have the, sixth highest square miles, which means that our recording department goes crazy. I mean, it makes 0 sense, and we're gonna be so far low. The county that's gonna beat us has like 200 square miles and 4,000 people. And you want morale to stay the same, and you want people to work as hard or harder for cutting wages?
What about the morale of the taxpayers?
Hey,
It's elected officials' fault.
Derek, I'm a taxpayer. My wife and I pay $6,000 a year in taxes, okay? And 16% of it goes to the county. The rest of it goes to the schools. Okay, so, yeah, the taxpayers count. I count. But you have mandatory things that are required to be done by the county. And the county, and I mentioned this in my proposal that I sent to you. The county is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on non-discretionary spending that you do not have to do. You are not obligated by any law in the state of Illinois that you have to do it. And everybody hates me because everybody likes animals. But the animal control budget, I'm sorry, Dave, is big. And the county has absolutely 0 statutory obligation to run that function. And so you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on non-discretionary spending, and then you want to nickel and dime all the county offices on mandatory functions?
No, not really.
This-
I agree with you on the animals.
I mean, this is what Rice and Natalie and I and the sheriff, for that matter, have talked about. And I've said it ad nauseum, and every time I presented my budget and explained our position on what we're trying to do. I mean, not only are we doing a public safety function, but we're doing public functions like property records, vital records, elections that are absolutely mandatory. And if we do not do them, we get in big trouble with the state of Illinois. And that is the difficult job of being a county board member in local government, because you have to balance where you get the money. And it's always going to be a big chunk from the taxpayers. But as I point out in my budget doesn't cost the taxpayers hardly a dime, because there's other revenue sources out there from the state of Illinois and people using fees to pay for stuff that pays for a lot of the stuff that we do. That covers Bryce's office, that covers my office. So, we can get into this argument of, well, we have to cut, down to the bare bone because, welcome to local government, we just don't have the money, boo hoo hoo. That's a false narrative. That's a false narrative, because you talk about magic wands. Oh, if you can find a revenue source, well, I can find an expense source that can go away, poof. Because you don't have to do it.
I would recommend you talk to the chair of the ag department or the ag committee and express these concerns.
I have. I recommend that you guys talk it over. when you get the budget time. But you're hitting,
We are meeting tomorrow, by the way. The ag committee's meeting tomorrow at 2:30.
okay, unfortunately, I'll be in court. Unfortunately, I'll be in court.
And I do statutorily believe we have to handle, which I don't understand all of it, but we have to do an animal control portion, but not the animal shelter.
No, we don't even have to do that.
And the rabies.
Yes,
I'll
we
have to
do.
talk.
It's a state law. The cat.
I forwarded the statute to Mr. Barrowman and Lotus regarding the statute that's out there for animal control.
Well, it's de minimis, and I know that when I was on the board and
Okay.
Liz, what's her name, did a fantastic job. And she did it
So,
on a shoestring.
now, do we entertain forwarding this to the board?
And I bring up a case scenario. I'll use Don as an example. You were a rural carrier for years and years and years. They were talking about compensation in that. You were basically paid by house or however distance you went, and they timed you. What would have happened if they would have built a big subdivision on your route that would added, let's say, 150 new homes? Do you think you should have been compensated with more pay because you had more deliveries to make, or should it have been kept the same? That's the same thing you're doing with Natalie and the rest.
Let me correct something. I was a city carrier, not a rural carrier.
What's that?
I was a city carrier.
Okay, well, I mean, let's look at rural carriers then.
Yeah.
That those, you think those people should be compensated for the extra mail deliveries? I mean, they're doing
answer
extra
that.
work, but you're saying they should be paid the same as what they were doing when they had, let's say, 300 stops versus 100 or 450 stops. You're gonna pay them the same, but they're doing this because it's their job. I mean, it's just kind of weird thinking.
I can throw something on top of that. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. Whenever the Amazon was being delivered by the post office, they added all these Amazon deliveries. The post office had to run 2 shifts. You were only allowed to run so many hours.
Right.
So you didn't do it for free.
The United States Post Office is a horrible example.
It really is. Like, it really is.
We get it. It's not fair. Nobody wants to do work they're not paid for. We get it.
It's not fair, it's about your out product too. And really, the problem is you're funding the position and not the person. We could all leave midterm, and good luck trying to find somebody that wants to put up with all of this and know accounting and know all of this stuff for what they would make less than half of your employees are currently making in the county. That's what we're getting at. There has to, and nobody's sitting here trying to get rich off taxpayers. However, there are standards that are set in various counties. There's standards.
What's your IMRF and what's the stipend amount?
So the IMRF stipend that I get is 2,000, and the stipend for risk managers, 5,600, I think. And that's because we take care of all the insurance claims. We're taking care of all the unemployment claims. We do all of that extra stuff that you would be paying people a lot of money that's not in our job
So
description.
You're
to
basically,
handle.
saying that we're taking $7,600 in stipends out of this resolution that would normally go to the county clerk.
Yeah. That's been there since the 70s.
What I have an issue with is that, as you just pointed out, what happens if you leave midterm?
The person behind me gets that stays. That's what, you set the salary for the position, not the person.
Right.
Right.
I would prefer to say, well, maybe that $7,000 could be used to pay a staff person that's doing the work. And then that way, if you leave, then that staff person would still be doing the work.
And you guys can totally do that. That's completely up to you.
Okay,
If you look at the resolutions that were sent, a lot of county clerks are the IMRF rep, and it's built in that they get stipends for that reason, because your county clerk's guaranteed for 4 years. That employee that sits there is not. If you look at turnover rates, you're not guaranteed that. At least for an elected official, they choose to leave at a 4-year term if they leave early. So when you have to train, you have to know a lot of information on that, and you need the longevity of it. So yeah, you could pay a staff member, but they don't have any job security.
What's the cost to have them trained?
Exactly, that's the kicker, a lot.
While they're thinking about that, are you guys coming in with a request for the other part,
Or to what?
the resolution?
For sure, I think I sent it to you guys, and so what I did, if you look at the handout that I gave you guys, It's actually really interesting. There's a formula. I took every county that passed a resolution in the state of Illinois, what they pay their clerks. I took it by land size and I took it by population. And you can plug those numbers in into a nice little formula, and it tells you, based upon that formula and what other counties are doing and what's supported by the state, is what our salaries should be. Now, I'm not
So are
asking
you
for our
saying these
salaries.
that you reported, the ones that.
Those
you
are,
believe
those are
passed?
approved. Those are passed and approved.
So the others are either leaving it the way, are not giving any increases and leaving it the way it
So
was?
everybody's getting an increase. Well, as far as I'm aware, everybody's getting an increase at this point in time. They're voting on it at the May meeting in a lot of these other jurisdictions that aren't on here. I am unaware of any other district that is not getting a raise.
Okay, so the first one on the list, County Park, Brown County, salary 55,000.
Yes,
Okay.
and they're half our size in population, and they're a third of our size land mass. So the work is drastically lower.
I can tell you the court system is a lot less.
Yeah, exactly. You see, when you have land mass, you have more responsibility. That's why you go up parcel counts and land mass. That usually can gauge where you're at. I mean, look at there was one that stood out that blew my mind. If you look at, Mason County, their population's less than ours, 12,300, they're 540. Their county clerk and treasurer are making 86 or 8,000, 86,000, 91. We're not asking for that. We are not asking for that by any means. But we are asking to not be the lowest paid when we're one of the highest landmass counties in the state.
Okay.
How many of those other counties have the same audit problems we have?
Or so.
Yeah, they're looking more than you think. But Donna's back behind.
I can't give you a number, but I can tell you, I just came from a
And
conference.
what's their poverty level? Our poverty level here is really high, 15%, highest in, almost third highest in the state for poverty people.
But we're low.
Do you want to put your elected officials in the poverty level?
No, but I bet there's some poverty level people that would like to have their jobs.
And are they qualified?
I don't know.
We're welcome to run.
Yeah, they can run.
These both.
All they got to do is quit and we got to force it, right? I mean, what are our options? Seriously, what are our options? Everybody's sitting here saying, more money, give me money. We have problems, financial problems. We're not bringing in enough money. We're spending more money than we're bringing in. And everybody wants more money. I don't hear a fix. I hear a lot of whining and crying.
Are you looking at long-term?
Yeah, raise taxes on poor people. Awesome. That's awesome.
That's the fix.
Yeah, hello, Governor Pritzker. To tax me to have fun.
So all right, getting back, the IMRF and the risk management is county stipends, those aren't state stipends.
Those are
So
county stipends.
Those are actually both paid out of different funds too. They're not a general fund expense.
They're paid out of taxpayer rate to produce funds.
Yeah, they are.
Risk manager is the only one that's not general fund. IMRF is general fund 7.
What?
But what you would pay somebody else, but that's what we're just getting at is somebody has to do the work, right? And so what you would pay, it's just like that unemployment insurance. We're probably gonna get stuck with an unemployment bill that if we would have kept them, we wouldn't have, and it's a high paying bill. So that there's a lot of things behind it. You gotta pay for the work. It doesn't just come for free. And I'm not saying I'm not gonna do it. That's not what I'm saying at all, because I first and foremost ran for this position and I will do everything in my power for it. But what I'm saying is the next person that comes behind me doesn't have to do it. And then you're gonna be stuck paying somebody to do it. And I'm asking you, nobody works for free. We all know that. And you guys most of you are on the labor committee. You guys have negotiated fairly decent compensation packages. You're on the verge of doing it again. You've got to keep everything in line or you're going to have employees outmake the elected officials and you're not going to have anybody who wants to do the job because they don't want to put up with the crap and I don't blame them.
I got several people I have to deal with that make more money than me.
Yeah.
Not always fun, but.
Yeah,
I
like, they
have
don't want to put
that
up with
too.
this kind of stuff because we don't want to put up with this kind of stuff, right? It's not pleasant. We're fighting through it, trying to work together, but it has to come with a trade-off at some point. And unfortunately, I do feel like a lot of these decisions are political. And I think that Rita said it best last week, keep emotions out of it. And you can't say that the work hasn't been getting done for the risk manager and the IMRF, because that's not a problem.
Let me just clarify though,
Sure.
I'm just asking, because I've just been reading this, while everyone's talking, but do I understand that what you guys are maybe requesting is about a 20% raise
No.
in the first year?
He was just giving an example.
No.
And this is just all hypothetical.
Well, right now it's 60,000, right?
Yeah.
The salary.
Yes,
This is just a comparison to the formula that she ran and what other county you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah, but then it says a salary range of 70 to 74,000, small yearly cost of living adjustments afterwards. I mean, moving from
That's her
60 to.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, so that would be a 20% raise, right?
No. I mean, Adams County is running a deficit in their general fund. They just moved their county clerk from 72,000 to 109,000. And they moved their treasurer from, I don't know, 50-some thousand to 80-some thousand. Now granted, they're bigger than we are. Makes perfect sense. Nobody's asking for that. But the problem is the wages for the elected officials have not kept up to market, and there's a problem with that.
I'm just trying to understand,
I-
what are you asking for?
We have not formally asked for anything, because we weren't asked to ask for anything. I was just trying to break the numbers down to where they were, how you could understand them based upon property size and back them with fact. I know that numbers make sense, and I was just trying to give you guys as much fact as possible. I don't think anybody here is asking for anything. None of us are asking for anything significant by any means. We're just asking not to lose money. And quite frankly, we haven't kept up with the CPI the past 4 years even. So we've actually gone backwards. And if we get zero raise, our salaries are actually going to be $53,000 by the end in what it would be actual spending.
What do you think the general employees have gotten, or if you take, set aside the union folks?
Like on average, I think usually we ask for about 2.5 a year, 2.5, 3 a year. It just depends. I think we all try to keep it around the CPI index.
Percentage?
Yeah.
But that's not been what's been paid.
No.
It's been asked, but it's not been what's been paid. Obviously, last year was none.
Yeah.
If the cost of living is 2.5% and there is no raise, which is your decision, that means we've taken a 2.5% cut. Because everything we buy, I mean, gas is not a good example. It's shot up and it'll shoot down. It's ugly right now. Groceries, electricity, everything, we're dealing with is going up.
Yeah, that's the same argument everybody else is gonna make too, when their goods go up. I mean, it's everything. I mean,
I hate that, I'm not saying advocating for tax increase, but I think the expense should be spread across the taxpayers. Spread out, small amount.
What will happen in 4
Cut
years?
somebody
They'll have to go
$6,000 that's doing
Yeah.
the job and doing a good job. Small amount.
$1,000 for wages.
Cost, well, I know, cost of living.
Make
You think we should take a cost of living cut? That's what your opinion is, to help your tax bill?
I think everybody should stay the same right now. I'm making
Okay,
$40,000.
so you're advocating she stay the same.
Right now, we're in an emergency. What do we do? I mean, if I don't take cuts to my business, I go under.
Well, this isn't a business. This isn't a business. This is government. And we have services just like a business. But if you start cutting services,
Live within your budgets. Right. If your budget goes up, then you have to set out something else.
so it's good. Be on the back of the employees that are doing a good job.
Like I said,
And not
I'm
getting
getting
raised.
$40,000 a year less. My taxes have gone up over $3 grand.
Mostly the school.
Right. I acknowledge that.
Big
but-
percentage of that, like, just like what was the percentage? I think like
84% is, 16% is the county.
So you're trying to whittle a few thousand here to save 12% of your. I mean, everybody understands cost. If you say there's never going to be any cost of living, then it makes sense to keep it the same. There's always going to be a cost of living. Your electricity bill's gone up, water bill, probably gas bill, whatever, utilities. You can't tell the utility, hey, I don't want to pay that.
Can't tell the tax guy that either.
So if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna move on because I don't know that we're gonna get.
So what did you decide?
Well, I don't know that we've decided anything as much as I have a resolution to propose that we get to the full board and then the full board can, this discussion can be continued there.
But that's what
because-
we did last time, and they asked for the finance committee to make a proposal.
Well, that's what I proposed. There's my proposal.
That you're leaving,
Everything the way it is.
The way it is, or you're cutting,
No, the way it is in my proposal there, that the salaries would stay at where they are currently for the next 4 years.
okay,
That the stipends would be taken out for IMRF and risk management. And apparently, even though I wasn't supposed to give the assessor a raise, I guess the part that I'm confused about is it's said time and time again, the board is supposed to set the budget. The board is supposed to be the ones that handle the money. The board is the one that comes up with the dollar amounts. So therefore, these are our dollar amounts, or at least this is my dollar amount. I've understood that there's actually some talk out there in the public that says the board's not being stern enough, that the board's sitting there and buckling, that it's really the board's fault that we're in this position that we are. Okay, so be it. This is my answer. I'm trying to contain cost. I completely agree with Mr. Filbert to say there are other places to contain cost, but this is a 4-year commitment. And if I knew what was going to happen in the next year or two, I would be more than willing to say, let's adjust something down the road. But I can't. This is what the resolution, I mean, this is what the statute says. We have to make a 4-year commitment on here's what people are going to get paid. I don't want to commit this county, and it is just me. I don't want to commit this county to expenses down the road when I cannot guarantee what the revenues are going to be.
don't you do that with union negotiations?
You join in a union? Or-
No, I'm just asking.
Okay,
I guess you do commit,
why not?
okay, I
And
just thought you said you didn't want to do that. but
I
you
don't
are
want
doing
to.
it. Okay.
I don't want to have to commit to it, but I'm forced in situations that I have to.
Okay.
So, I've been, and then the second part that I'll bring up, which has been blatantly pointed out to me before, is that we are not Adams County. We are not any other county in this state. So to continue to compare our county to other counties and say, here's what they get paid, or here's the problems they're having compared to ours and so forth, we are in our own little bubble here that we have to try and fix our own problems. And so I would love to be able to say, here's what somebody's doing over so-and-so, but then I'm told, well, that's not how we have to do it. Okay, fine. So we have our own rules that we're trying to establish and follow. Things continue to change, and we're just trying to learn as we go.
So to learn as you go, though, don't you think that it's critical to look at what other counties do? Because other counties usually have more resources than us. So you can learn by example from what other counties do to try to save some of those headaches going forward that we might face by situations that we're not used to. Right?
Oh, it's a valid point,
Yeah.
but then it's difficult for me to say that they do have the other resources to be able to do that, and we just don't. We don't have the resources to have a
We
full
don't
line.
have a deficit number, right?
Seriously?
Yeah,
You still don't believe this county has any type of a deficit?
I just would like a number
Now, I
within
would like you to
10%.
give me the number. You have
I'm
the,
not the finance chair.
but you can't do that.
I'm not the treasurer. No, I can't. Assume I can't. Assume I can't and assume I really just want assistance and I want to know what the deficit is. Because you're talking about taking food off our table essentially. This is exactly what you're doing, which is fine. You can do that. But you're talking about that by saying there's a deficit, but nobody can tell us what the number is. And the last audit we had showed a surplus.
The 2022 audit showed a surplus.
Yeah.
Based off of what?
The numbers that we gave them.
Right, so the 2022 audit showed that we missed out on $300,000 of taxes not being collected.
And we still had a surplus. So the
Why?
taxpayer
Why?
should thank us
Because
for
we
that,
had a
Eric.
$3 million ARPA funds that isn't extra revenue, but just cash.
We had a surplus. I'm just saying, if there's a deficit, I'd like to know the number. Because at this point, it's starting to feel very political.
It's not political, it's math.
Then what's the deficit number?
It is whatever you calculate it to be.
Okay.
What, I mean, all right.
well.
I'm
one-
sorry.
One thing
I'm
that
sorry.
I keep going back to, and maybe I'm being too simplistic, but we cashed out 750,000 in CDs to pay our bills. And that's one-time money we're not gonna have next year. So without reductions, I feel like at least we're going into a deficit with 750,000. So I think
You
it's
reduce
very
it is by
serious.
mandatory offices, not the optional offices. You think that's the way to fix it?
No,
We're just now
no.
working on the budget. I don't, I mean, like, I haven't even got to the point to where we're talking about the sheriff has already reduced about $150,000 of his budget between not rehiring a couple people, by renegotiating some of the medical part, that one that you complain about. So we have departments that are working on trying to get the budget down or the expenditures down, which is great. Okay, this is yet another thing that we can at least hold our expenses at. So
Actually reduce them, right?
I
By $28,000, because you're taking away 7,000 a year essentially from one elected official.
7,000. But yeah, but I still believe that 7,000 is probably going to be spent back in, because I don't know if the job's going to get done or not. So we have to pay somebody to do it.
So why wouldn't you pay the same person that's gonna do it? I don't understand. Why would you want to train somebody new? I don't get this logic. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Yeah, I will.
So, moving on, the,
Are you moving off this?
well, I haven't heard anybody want to forward this on, so I don't know what to
I don't
do.
know, but I'd make a motion that we approve it with the $60,416,000 or $60,416 salaries. The same for the supervisor of assessments, and then we include the IMRF stipend. Can we set the stipends? Do we have to have a certain amount of stuff?
We can do anything.
Yeah, so I would say we do the IMRF stipend at $1,500 or whatever it was set at, and we do risk management at,
What is it, Natalie?
we do the risk management part.
10,000 each.
Yeah.
10,000 each.
Yeah, we do the 1,500.
No, so the IMRF is 2,000 and the risk manager is 6,500, and that's split between myself and Catherine because we have to have two of us that go through all of the insurance. Like, we're the ones that handle all of that.
Explain that, what all of the, I mean, I get IMRF, you go through some training, what
Yes.
risk management training are you going through?
We don't do training. We handle the claims. I mean, so the claims come through us. We're the ones on the portal that are filing everything. That's what we follow. So we do that. We do the unemployment now. Yeah, we will fight all the unemployment claims. So property casualty, anytime there's damage, we work with the adjusters.
Like I said, I would make a motion that we do it at everything at this amount. And we're,
Yes,
That's a
Nicole.
question.
Doing the 60,000 would actually take me down, so I think I make 61. And that was to make up for the non-talkative thing that you said before, in quotes.
Right.
Yeah, her salary's a little
Were we
above.
leaving her at that, or are you saying drop her down to that too? Because she actually would take a pay cut.
well, I thought she was above this, since that's.
Since it's not- But what gets me is we don't have a starting salary
A starting salary of what?
for any
It was zero.
elected official.
It was, yeah, zero. I mean, it's based upon the job, Don. So like, it's not for any individual. So like, if Scott were to leave, the person that's treasurer would get the treasurer's salary. It doesn't drop down by years of experience. You fund the position.
No, I'm saying,
The starting salary was zero, literally. I mean, and then statute came in the 70s, and I think the statute set
that if someone replaces-
6,500 maybe, or 7,000 in 73 maybe for the roles.
That's 3% a year.
And it was 3%, yeah, 3% a year increase.
whoever takes over, if someone with midterm.
Yeah.
Then whoever takes over.
Yeah.
Gets that current salary.
Yes,
But what I'm saying is, we don't have a starting salary for any position. If someone new comes in,
Mhm.
we're starting way up here where they're at now. I know you're not saying it's way up there, but, we're starting them there.
Yeah.
Instead of maybe, if you work at a business, you're gonna start in less than what someone
Yeah,
that's
but
been there a while.
Don, a business doesn't have a state law that says you gotta do it this way.
right, yeah.
So don't fight the problem. It is what it is.
Okay, well, we do have one meeting.
Well, just to add to that, I've been trying for 5 months to hire a bookkeeper to stay within my budget, to stay within what I'm allowed. And I finally have somebody lined up that's gonna start. Would have been nice, trying to hire a bookkeeper for what I'm having to pay. I don't see where you guys think going down is the right idea.
No, I'm just asking,
Hopefully,
We don't
that's what
have
you're
any
wanting is to
benefits.
go down.
is
What
that
you're
there's a
saying.
starting salary for anybody new coming in.
You just said they should start down here and work their way up. That's what you just said. Did I misunderstand? I'm trying to work within the budget that I have, and as you know, all of you know, I've been within my budget.
Nobody's like,
Good job, Bryce. I've never heard that.
I told you good job at a board meeting. And
Okay,
I told
sorry.
you I appreciated that.
One exception. All the grant money that I got, you guys squandered that.
I commented about, thank you on that.
Well, I didn't hear it. Thank you.
Okay.
Good to hear one.
Sitting right there.
Well, that's, I mean, yeah, good, exactly. My grants were coming in at $6,500 for all of the 2000s a year. That's all you guys got in grants. I've over $500,000 in tertiary grants just in the 7.5 years I've been here. That's more than you guys have paid. And the next person might not write grants. And then you're stuck not getting that. That's what we're saying. We've done a lot. Our offices pay for ourselves. Our revenues bring in the money, and I feel like we just keep getting penalized.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
You don't know what we do and you don't know what we go through to do
I
it.
go with that.
And the
If-
professional
I don't
level
know
that these
what
offices do,
numbers you're looking at, but
change the subject.
we have the current salaries and the current stipends. Is your proposal that we just keep the current salaries and stipend?
At least, that's the current salary.
That's the current salary.
What I did for the assessors was because that wasn't equal to the others when you put it.
I feel like it's arguing over, I mean, that's not gonna correct our budget at the end of in 4 years.
Grain of salt in the ocean.
Couple things to solve, but it's not the thing that's
I
gonna,
agree.
not gonna make the change. I would make the motion, we just leave it where it's currently at for the next 4 years. It's already sucks, like it,
I'll second.
so, yeah, reduce that to
Drop her down to what she was.
what she was, and then, because we can't talk about this.
That is what she was.
We can't calculate in anything from the state,
You know what she was, anyway?
And I don't understand that logic, but we can talk about whatever number we want to talk about.
So just say that
the state.
for Brown in Schuyler County, their assessor took that to the board because they don't get anything. And they actually added that 60, whatever, to her salary.
The 6,500,
Right.
you're not supposed to talk about that.
No, but
So,
they did that.
That's what that is.
well, this for compensate. Is that word? This evens it up between, that's a $3,000 stipend, that's a $6,500 stipend that we're not supposed to talk about.
Right.
So this is just adding the additional $3,500.
Yeah.
And we're getting all elected
For
officials. and
my
everything.
state, I have to meet all these requirements, and I can't tell you the last time it missed requirements. I can't tell you the last time this position has gotten it. It's been like,
Oh, wait, you don't even get the 3,000?
no, don't qualify. You have to meet certain requirements of like, when you turn in your state abstracts, and because everything is selling for crazy amounts, everything is so off whack that I can't tell you a
So it's a
county that
conditional
has gotten
stipend.
that one.
Yep. I wonder if we can do conditional stipends. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I can't tell you, and it's out of this position's control, it's just based off of where everything else is selling, and I can't tell you a supervisor of assessments that's gotten that stipend.
Okay.
Just put that out, I'm just saying, it's not an automatic one. I didn't realize that either, but
Can I ask while they're thinking, because you weren't at our last meeting, I don't think. Yeah, somebody asked what happens if we don't pass a resolution. And I don't want to speak for him, but I think Jim My impression was Jim spoke up and said it would stay the equivalent of what it is now this year. Does that sound right to you or?
Yeah.
Could-
That sounds right.
I thought so too, but, maybe you could have a chance to look at it before Wednesday.
Well, I'm looking at it anyway.
I don't know.
I'll have it by Tuesday.
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution with the salaries froze, including the IMRF and the risk management stipends at their current rate, and then approve the supervisor assessments at the proposed amount on here. Of 63,960.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
The only reason I did it is because we still got so many problems to fix on the back end. Like we gotta hold fast where we're at right now. Like I get it, you guys. I've already been told I'm not gonna be getting that as much of a raise. I've got to pass my job too. It's not like it's an issue. So we're gonna work. Walker, I agree 1000% that we spend way too much money on other areas that we don't need to. So
Well, and I finished getting my degree and nobody wanted to pay any more on their insurance premiums, so I didn't get to make any money either, so. I mean, it just, things happen. I can't say.
Well, at least the insurance rate can stay the same, you know.
Or we can get, yeah, or we can get lower premiums.
That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah.
Cost of living is just a reality.
Right.
It's
All right.
unfortunate.
All right.
So then moving on, I think we all voted all those in favor. Yeah, okay, yeah. So we've passed this to go forward to the full board. All right, financial policy update. I sent out a questionnaire to both the clerk's office and the treasurer's office to answer some questions on responsibilities that they saw within their departments. And so I'm taking that information and digesting that and trying to figure that into our financial policies. So things are proceeding forward with that. Update on CIC Paycom payroll.
So I will comment on that. I was aware that Mr. Burbridge said that I didn't give Scott some, I think, was it the reports or was it the file? Like the file?
Apparently in there on the 7th, they said that they hadn't got the report
Okay,
yet.
so
To pull the information off of.
they get the reports before payroll's even processed. So I have to give what's called a chart of claims. So when I pay something, I give the whole report. So that's what Don and I were talking about extracting the information off that
Right,
last.
so those numbers are in there
Yes, yeah.
and they're visible. You could pull that sheet out and show it to me and show me those numbers right now.
So those are given every payroll and then, so that's
How long after the payroll before they send them the numbers?
before payroll to process. That's how they know how much to transfer. They wouldn't be able to transfer money if they didn't know how much the payroll was and what the social security was and the IMRF and the gross wages from each department. It's about a 48-page report.
So when we were sitting there that day, you said you would send them a monthly report.
A GL file.
No,
Yeah.
I said
Balance.
that's what I'm working on is the GL file, trying to balance it. But right now, we can't cross funds. That's where we're stuck. I worked on it for about 4 hours today and I worked on it all weekend. Trying to figure out exactly where we can cross them, because if I do it regular, you're gonna have about 40 different journal entries to make to move money. And I know that's gonna throw you off even worse than just putting it to a clearing
But
account.
isn't that, don't you send it to them in an Excel sheet?
No, they won't take they were told they didn't want electronically. Yeah,
That's not
Catherine,
what-
so we were trying to cut back on paper and Catherine talked to Carrie about 8 months ago to see if she could email her the payroll report and she said absolutely not. She wanted it in paper. And I just assumed they wanted to keep it that way. So that's why we.
That's ridiculous.
That's not an Excel spreadsheet.
I can put it in an Excel spreadsheet if you say you want it.
You were gonna work on a separate GL file that will balance by fund.
That's what I understood.
That's
That's
an
what
upload.
Because
That's-
when I asked her that, and to get the process down, that you were gonna send her something that she could look at, like an Excel spreadsheet, and then just straight upload it into the CIC.
Oh, no. The upload is what we can't do because the general ledger.
You're not going to, they're going to.
I'm the one building it, like the payroll's building it. So you wouldn't have to extract anything, you would just upload. So what they were gonna have to do, what we discussed was, they have to look at the net pay. And then they get that the very last page of the payroll summary. That net pay is the debited out of the clearing account. I credit the clearing account. They have to debit it and credit cash because that cash goes out the door. That's your double entry.
That sounds like gobbledygook to me.
I am more than, I understand. It's taken me a long time to try to figure out. I know that you had issues with my attendance. So if you want to, I can schedule an appointment with you and I can show you what it looks like to me. Because sometimes two heads are better than one.
My schedule isn't really, I can't really set it. I like to walk into my public official and say, hey, what's up?
Unfortunately, I have conferences. I was in Chicago for elections. We have a lot going on. And so I want to make sure that I can answer questions for you whenever you need them. You have my cell number?
Yeah, I don't need your cell number.
Well, I just want to make sure if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out. So
I feel free
okay.
to reach out. But
Okay.
like I said, that, you guys are talking about money, wanting more money. Trying to see something here. What am I seeing? I'm seeing can't be done. I'm not gonna do this. We sat down in a meeting. I asked the girl, she showed me Derek's spreadsheet. It was highlighted in colors. I asked her straight up, so you're gonna take the information and use that spreadsheet to put it in there, and everybody agreed yes, and it's not done.
I don't know why, because the report is the same. All the information they need to put in Derek's spreadsheet is in the report that they get before payroll's even processed.
Okay, what happened to the phone conference? What was gonna happen when you sat down and did it all at one time?
We're
Okay,
waiting
we're
for
gonna
a
sit
GL
down.
file before we set up the phone conference
Yep,
with Liz.
With another party, with CIP, not me.
right. All three of you were gonna get on a phone conference. You, in case something happened wrong, you were gonna be on the phone call to make the difference. That's exactly what you said.
Yes, and
That is exactly what you said.
but nobody's reached out to the third party, is what he's saying. So we
We
haven't,
don't have the GL file.
he's not talking about the GL file, Scott. He's talking about the file that Derek created, that Don.
No, I'm, right. The GL file
Oh,
was supposed to be used to pull out Derek's information.
no. The GL file is the automatic upload that prevents using Derek's spreadsheet. The GL file is the automatic upload. That's what we can't do because we can't cross funds.
I understand that. So why don't they have the GL file so they can take the information off of it?
Scott, you want me to start sending you this electronically in an Excel sheet?
You were gonna create a file. And we were gonna send it off to Liz and get Liz's
then-
direction on it.
And then they were gonna have a phone call, all three of you, in case when they uploaded, something happened, you'd be there also to find out.
Yeah.
The whole thing. That was the whole thing.
That's not the GL file. That is the file that they're going to create themselves on Derek's Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
Yes.
From the GL file you were gonna send them.
No. If I had a working,
Then how are they gonna get the numbers if you don't send them to them?
they get the numbers. If I had a working GL file, they wouldn't need the spreadsheet to upload. It would upload itself.
Why does that still sound like gobbledygook to me?
I don't know. I don't know, but you can't give them bad data. That's the problem. And I can't.
Why
upload bad
is the
data
GL bad data?
Because we're crossing funds.
You have your system.
Yes.
You said you're gonna give them a file that they could cross-reference with the Excel spreadsheet to fix the problem.
That is not true.
That is exactly what you
That
said.
is not what I said.
Oh, well, then I'm a fucking liar.
No, I don't think so, but I'm just saying that's.
I
not what
was
I
sitting
said.
right there and
know,
I made notes.
I know, but just like you said, gobbledygook, I think sometimes we confuse what we hear. What I'm
No,
saying is.
no.
What
I
I'm,
have a good comprehension.
what I'm saying is
Call me a liar.
what I'm
Okay.
saying is I cannot provide a working GL file. We're still trying to figure it out. So I invited Derek and Scott to come and see it today in my office before the meeting. I think they had something going on.
A month later.
So anyway, so I would like to show you guys so you can see what I'm talking about when I say these funds are crossing. And that's why you can't get a balance in them. But the second thing is Derek's spreadsheet does not rely on our GL fund. You have to extract the data out of the payroll report. Those payroll reports are given before payroll is even processed. That's how you know how much money to move and what funds they come from and what deductions are had. That's given every single payroll before we even process it. And that's what they have to extract the whole numbers out of and put them in the spreadsheet. And that's what they can upload
And you're
instead
telling
of
me
doing journal back.
Nobody at Paycom can help us get a report that will export out of Paycom in the format that we need it.
No, we have the format, but Paycom balances the file to the
By account.
entire file.
Or you said one by account, one by fund.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the problem. Because you have multiple different accounts. You have Fund 8, which is the health department.
Yeah, I get
Your social security comes out of Fund 11, but you have matches that come out of Fund 8.
it.
They're not crossing. They're crossing. And that's why you can't get a zero balance in Fund 8. CIC, when we met with Liz, will not let us upload. Even if the entire file balances, each fund has to balance. That's the way CIC was set up. So each fund has a clearing account. Each fund has its own social security run through. So that's been our problem the whole time, is because I have people that get stipends from the GIS committee, right? That stipend goes to the health department because that's where that person's check comes from.
Yeah, I get that part of it. It gets all convoluted. What I'm talking about is like somebody that makes these softwares, they should be able to get into their API and say, this is how we want this information to be sent out of our system. And you're telling me they only do it by account. They don't do it they won't do anything to not cross your funds.
It's the stipends, because I worked with it too.
Yeah.
And so if you had $100 stipend, the system was automatically taking and putting like.
Okay, then take it out and
$30.
write them a check for their stipend.
That's what I said. No, that's exactly what I said. I said, I can map it directly to the fund, but they're gonna have, when they move the money, they're gonna have all those extra vouchers to transfer.
I'm just saying, take the stipend completely out of the payroll
I can't.
process.
I can't, because that's gonna be considered a different income. You charge 22% tax on. You can't do it. It has to go with the paycheck. So that's what I'm saying. I can do it, and that's what we talked about, but you guys are gonna have about 40 different vouchers to make to transfer each one of those payrolls. Now, before, what they did with CIC, they didn't map it to the fund. Scott would transfer the money, I think, right at the beginning of the year for like those stipends, so you would debit that account. So it would actually show a debit, but the money would sit in payroll clearing, and then as you paid it out throughout the year, it would start slowly leaking out, but it wasn't a true accounting of it because it was just sitting in payroll clearing in no man's land all year.
What I'd like is, I'd still like to have somebody from Paycom, somebody from CIC, and you guys on the same conversation at one time. Because there's way too many people that use CIC, there's way too many people that use Paycom, there's way too many units of local government that use both of them to have these problems. I'm not that old, but I have been in a lot of boards and involved in a lot of organizations, and I've never heard just the kind of the continuous issue that we've had here.
You shouldn't have it.
You shouldn't.
No, you
No.
shouldn't.
So why have we've been dealing with this? It's like 5 years it's been going on. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, we had a problem and we're working it out. It's like, no, this is a chronic issue.
No, the chronic issue is the fact that the vouchers aren't being made. That's your chronic issue.
Yeah.
Because one department refused to do the double entry. That's the problem. We're making our entries. Our entries are going in, our entries are hitting the expense line. All of that's being done. That's done deal.
Mhm.
What's happening is when money is moving, they're not making the entries to move the money. The reason was because the old system did it for us. That's wonderful when it works, but it doesn't always work. So therefore, you have to make those journal entries to catch it up.
Yeah,
So
I understand that.
That's not happening. So I can't force them to make the entry, and I can't make them either.
At the end of the day, we're talking about spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And files. Like, I've seen some people do some crazy stuff with spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Like, can we just have the conversation with somebody from Paycom and somebody from CIC at the same time? I'm not saying you're not doing everything you can to get it figured out, but like, just let's hear it from the freaking people who do it.
We can do that again.
We've had a conversation
yes.
with Paycom and CIC at the same time.
Liz and Matt, both, and it's both. Liz is like, it's not our data. This is how we need it, and that's how I have the spreadsheet. It's ready to go. We've got our files set up, but they have to have it balanced. And until we figure that out, she can't help
Let's
us.
try one more time to get them both together and a few of us. And I mean, I don't see how it's worth a try.
Sure.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Maybe they
I
can shed
will-
light on something.
Yeah, try and get it figured out. Let's find it.
Maybe not. I don't know. Whoever handles the API for Paycom, get one of their tech guys on there that just is second nature to that stuff. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just two CSV files that need to be able to talk.
Yeah.
Just data.
That part, I don't think that that's the problem. The
No.
problem isn't they don't talk. The problem is like with the $100, because like I was working with
Yeah.
them, looking at going, oh my gosh, so this person has this stipend of $100 and now it's taking 0.25% and putting it here, 0.25% putting it there and there and there. And it's like, whoa,
Like,
So
trust me,
there's-
you can put rules.
yes,
you can
and
put all
that's
kinds
what.
of- There's gotta be
we're
somebody who
doing.
knows how to
That's
do
what
it.
The rule.
I mean,
is.
I know how to do it. There's somebody that does.
Okay, well, and that's what I was reaching out to Paycom myself too and saying, okay, how do we, what do we need to change here? Because we don't want this to go to like, say a person worked for 2 or 3 different places, it was taking taxes to each one, which makes sense. But on a stipend, it doesn't. And so that's where the hitch is. I think they
Maybe
have it
just
pretty well
re-
narrowed down to that
Yeah,
one
don't
section.
stipends.
It's just a matter of they can
Yeah,
sit and
we-
go, okay, what do
We
we
need
may
to
have
do something
to do
different.
some
with
manual
stipends.
stuff with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be done. But I think.
And that's what I said, as long as they're fine with the manual stuff, we can get a working file. I mean, but there is gonna be manual entries, and if those aren't made, just like they weren't made before, you're gonna have accounts that start showing large balances.
But I think I know it can be done, and I think Derek has made great strides, and I know
Yeah.
Scott's been working with him, and Natalie will work with them, and I think it's just a matter of we all have to do what's best for the county in here and say, okay, this may not be what I want to do,
Mhm.
and I may not want
No, I
to make this
understand.
increase.
I've said that.
but I
many
think
times that
let's just
I
get-
I told those two, they need to go in the same room until I basically work it out, but it's just,
I think we're
this is-
closer, in
it's
my
not-
opinion.
this is not normal.
Doesn't
This is
matter.
not normal.
No,
So Scott, let me ask this question. Are you okay if we get the file that uploads and then you guys would have to go in and balance some vouchers out on those stipends with the money transfer?
you do the file and I'll send it to Liz and see how it will work with CIC.
Okay, but you're okay doing a few extra steps during payroll if you have to balance that out on the accounts?
Depends on what she recommends and how she directs us.
If it keeps us from being 4 or 5 years behind on audits, I would say,
Well, that's not really why we didn't.
I
get
know
on
that,
this.
but I'm just saying, like, it's a
Yeah.
lot, it's a part of it. So it's just,
Let me skip ahead here. What I have seen from Paycom is Paycom will not put the departments correct. So in other words, and I saw what Natalie had sent over to where it's the treasurer's responsibility to put into CIC by department. And I don't know how the 48 pages is gonna tell you that unless you manually go through and say, this person works here, this person works here. And I have to assume that you guys have put together a spreadsheet that says, here's all the employees, this goes to the sheriff, this goes to this.
Yes,
Which then makes it seem like you should be able to take all of those employees and just put in the gross amount. So in other words, I'll just say, you may get something out of Paycom that says, here's the column that gets all the gross amounts. Then you go ahead and make another column that translates to where just 10%, whatever you're talking about. Just say Joe Smith has a gross of $10,000 that goes towards sheriff, period. And then that's what's going to be uploaded into the sheriff's part of the expense. So I understand that part of it's going to be Social Security, but that's where I've seen this happen time and time again, is that you've got to have the spreadsheet basically do the work for you. So you get the export from Paycom, you have to manipulate, do the formulas and so forth to make it do what you want it to do, even though it's not giving it to you exactly, because I've never seen a payroll system give you exactly what you want. So you have to manipulate what it gives you in order for it to say, okay, I'm going to take this 10%, that 2%, whatever else, and add it to this, and then have it as another column that adds it all together. And then that's what you would be able to export back out. So that's my 2 cents from what I just heard. If you want to send me the Excel CSV file from Paycom, but anytime I've looked at it before, I haven't been able to see anywhere in there that delineates and says this goes to sheriff or this goes to deputy A, deputy B. And that's one of the key parts that you have to know in order for it to match into CIC. It's not good enough to say it's the sheriff's department.
it's by line item.
It's correct. It's by line item. So
Yeah.
therefore, if there are stipends that are having a problem being being separated on what line item it goes to, then I say that we take those stipends, add them all together to get that right amount to that employee, and then force it into the line item it needs to go to. So that would be.
And
so
I think
if you
it's
send
worth
me
a
the,
shot, I think it's worth a shot to look at.
so send me the spreadsheet and I'll look at it and see if I can
Because even if
figure
you
out.
need to, you could sit, if you had to do a bunch of manual entry, you could sit down and do all the manual entry one time. You can make a macro.
Oh, it takes us 10 minutes to put payroll in now.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got it down.
I'm
So I
talking on
mean,
his end.
oh,
Like,
and
when he
his
gets
end,
in,
yeah.
he's so-
yeah.
So back to him entering all, so you guys entering all the expenses. The spreadsheet that I have, what you're already entering is just additional information. I mean, you already are entering the top half of that spreadsheet. It was the bottom part that wasn't being done as far as this is the employer's responsibility for Medicare. This is the employer's responsibility for IMRF.
Yeah.
And then there is the one part that I know you had a hinge pin on, and here's the $240,000 that needs to be paid from cash. Fine, you don't want to enter that number. I've shown them on the report where that number needs to be entered. If you would enter all of the other numbers and then they can enter in off of the report that $240,000, we're back to where I think my spreadsheet works.
Yeah. So where we're at, so as far as the Medicare and everything, that's what they need to put in because they're transferring the money out of Social Security and putting it in the clearing account. So because they're physically transferring that money, that would have to come on the back end because we're processing it, we're paying it. Like we're processing the entire payroll. So what you need to do is because we're not writing a check directly from that fund, so it's not gonna hit the GL, that's being put into a clearing account. So anytime you're moving money into the clearing account, you have to tag those accounts that you're moving that money to, and then you're shipping the big sum out. So we're tagging the line item as the paychecks, the gross paychecks. So we're putting all of those expenses in there. So then anytime you're moving money on the back end to fund anything, like funding what is it we give you? We give you a summary fund report or whatever that tells you exactly how much from each line. When that money's moved, that voucher will be automatically created when they write the check from that fund to put it in the clearing account. And that's how it would hit your GL.
Send me your
Yeah.
spreadsheet, please. And I can look at it and see what I can come up with.
You know, and I would just make one other suggestion. Sometimes I just get the feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, that you don't want us talking to Paycom. But I just feel like rather than try to convene a meeting with both sides, it might be good if somebody, maybe a couple of us or something, could talk with Paycom, explain what's happening and say, can you help us? Because we don't want some PR person or some manager. We need somebody that actually designs the system.
So let me tell you how Paycom works. That's what you don't get, right? Paycom is a system. You build it, it's your information. We have full access to move the GL around. We have full access to build, to take away. They just provide the system. They don't provide us legal advice on taxes. They don't provide us any type of payroll advice. They're not our accountants. They don't provide us with accountancy advice, all of that. So we're really just paying for the system, right? And we're paying for them to make sure that our taxes are paid once they get the money and that kind of thing. But we don't pay them to actually build it out, right? So what we would honestly need, and this is what we talked to, I think, Jackie Barwin about when she was first doing this, is we really need an accountant to come in and clean the GL up. That would be the key priority, to start working on that, but that's a really big undertaking. So then in the meantime, I guess we're just stuck with trying to figure it out, and that's what we've been trying to do. And unfortunately, I've learned more about Excel in the past 5 years than I ever care to admit. You know, we're trying, but it is a lot when you're trying to make sense of a GL that, you know, is 70-page chart of accounts. So that's why I say we can talk to Paycom. They're just not, I've been down that road. We've talked to them. They throw their hands up and say, we don't get paid for that.
I'm just saying, get into it and say, we can't get Paycom to produce, either export the information this way or read it the way they want it. It's just, that's.
Agreed. And I have probably 50 emails where I've asked to go back to zero and rebuild. I mean, this is not like we just started. I mean, we've been asking for all kinds of stuff and we can't rebuild.
Paycom creates a general ledger for Adams County.
Yeah.
And then the Adams County Human Resources Department converts it for the treasurer's office to where it orders.
No, the Adams County Clerk doesn't do payroll. The Human Resource Department does, the county board office.
The Human Resource Department, that's.
Yeah, but
But in our case, we don't have a human.
yeah,
resource.
the treasurer's
We
office,
got you.
the treasurer's office created the spreadsheet. Yeah, he's the one
The
that filled
Human
it out.
Resources created.
Well, anyway, you give them the problem and say, what's the
Yeah.
solution to this problem?
Yeah,
I've reached out to Paycom, they don't want to speak to me.
Well, I agree.
I'm only on there
You
at,
guys are IT.
I'm only on there as an employee.
All right,
I
so,
can add you, Scott. You want me to add you? Use it? No, I can't. It's-
but
Okay.
moving on. So if you will get me the spreadsheet on what you guys are using, I will see if there's something. If you would also send, you must be using a spreadsheet to import into CIC for what you are doing, correct?
Right, import a spreadsheet. No, we're creating it manually and then we're doing the manual voucher.
Okay, so you're not doing an import
No.
that JD or, because
No.
what CIC says, if you've got an outside payroll system, that you can use whatever and then it imports in. You're not doing anything.
No.
That you're doing physical typing.
We're doing a voucher.
If you would put your numbers into the spreadsheet would do the vouchers for you, so you wouldn't have to be doing.
Right. And I agree with that. I wanted to make sure that we knew what the system was doing before we automated it, because I think that was the problem where it fell out. People didn't know what the system was doing for us, to know when it stops working, what you have to do. So we were trying to educate ourselves first.
Moving on under treasurer updates, just fund balance reports, and where are we at on?
You pretty much went over all that a while ago.
All
The
right, and
revenue.
then open retirement fund anticipation, no bids.
Got 3 of them.
Will be done.
You want-
All right, first bid UCB is at 4.95%. No bank fees. Second one is Great Rivers at 4.75% for not to exceed 250,000. So what we're asking for.
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't do the full amount
Um,
because it was unnecessary.
And then the final one here is Farmer State Bank. And it is at 5.47. So it appears that Great Rivers is at the 4.75% due on or before November 30th of 2026. So
If no fees or anything, does that state that explicitly?
it doesn't say there's any fees or anything. This one says no fees, but this one doesn't include any, so I guess I have to go with there are no fees.
And on a positive note on this, last year we did this in January.
Like,
Last year we bought $100,000.
so,
Wait, last year we did this in
I
January.
know that.
but this is for retirement.
Yeah, this is a retirement fund.
Yeah, so, all right. So am I entertaining the motion that we present the Great Rivers bid at 4.75? Motion by Don,
So yeah.
second by Lance.
He roads for service.
Any discussion?
Don't put all that on there.
Did you put in the seven thing?
5.47,
What's that?
4.75.
I was just gonna say that.
Oh.
The point is like Alexander.
All
The
right.
next thing is the state takes.
To the board to do.
What's that?
We're sending this to the board.
Yeah, and I will send out a sheet and I'll make a copy of the resolution and forward it on to Walker as well. And all the board members.
All right. So any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I would,
Those opposed, nay.
I would make sure to say, I like the fact that UCB said no.
No, they just didn't say.
Oh,
Support the sign.
I'll reach out to them.
Just make sure that.
Online, I think by the meeting.
For the right spots of our country.
pending, so pending, no fees.
Yeah.
All right. Pending, no fees. All those say aye. Aye, those opposed, nay.
It's like.
Finish the question before it's put.
All right. Any old business that we haven't somehow discussed? Any new business? All right, I'll open it for public comments again.
Have you approved the bid? Bill?
Wait, I'm sorry, on old business. Any updates, anything on the audits? Just like to stay on top of that.
He submitted the federal single audit for 22 today to the federal clearinghouse that got accepted, so that should close out 22. Is the 22 GATA done? Is
22 GATA should be, it's
21
close,
or 22, neither one.
but close, right? Because
I don't know, I gotta figure out where to take that away from. Reaching out to,
Anna, did
Anna.
that give you that?
well, she's off with her husband, he's sick,
Okay.
so.
So Scott and I actually talked quite a bit about GATA because like what 85% of it is from the health department, so it's not.
I just don't wanna take away from a line that,
Yeah.
is gonna affect some other thing that was turned in.
Right.
I don't know all of the things turned in, numbers turned in.
So I guess I was thinking that the 21 one was done. I did check that off. Do we need to chat or you
I
gonna
got
wait till it gets back?
300 and some thousand. On that line.
Okay, I'll be glad to help you with that or look at it with you but if Anna can help us, that's probably our key.
I'm gonna let you take them out of there, so don't fall on my head.
Thanks a lot. So,
As it pertains to the audit, I'd like to clarify that we have corrected the situation that caused us to be where things weren't being notified to the state, correct?
Yes, I sent a thing to him today, and I copied Rita in it.
Okay, so where the error happened in the past on somebody thought they were gonna let us know when they wanted something, and I guess we were supposed to be doing it automatically or something, so now we have.
I wasn't aware that they wanted us to do it monthly, because I used to do it in the beginning. And then when Andy appointed Walker to oversee the audits, he was doing it, so I quit.
Okay, well, that,
But you're
whatever
doing
happened, we now are on track with doing it how we need to be doing it.
I actually included all the others in it, so I included all of them at the same time.
So, for the record, on whatever's being recorded here, we have it going forward. That
And
it's
according to Anna, we're still on target, the way we're going right now, as long as they can get the rest of the things in there they need.
we're
I
still
pretty much
shooting
got
for.
everything in there that for falls.
Okay, yeah, well, I was gonna say, we should hopefully get our 2023 by fall.
Yeah,
That's what
Yeah,
we're
we've worked really hard, all into last week and then this week. I think we only have one open item right now, and that's some credit card statements that Charlie's going through, but everything else has been uploaded from the county clerk site.
For what it's worth, circuit clerk's office has sent everything that I know that they've asked us for 23.
Same.
Not that they can't come back and
Yeah, and they will, but
That's
for
for
at least
more.
preliminarily, we're
what
all.
they've asked for now they have.
you might check some of them, because I think there's a couple things that were AB.
Thank you, Brian.
that we didn't have.
Hey,
Okay,
good to hear.
today.
So Derek,
Yeah, okay, I was working on it between GIS and,
Walker, do you remember
On the
when we
audit.
told them we'd have 24?
What?
When did we tell them we would have 24 done?
They're
When
gonna
did we
start
tell
on it in
Jim?
the fall.
I'm
It'll
24,
be the first part of next year.
next year,
And that's what we told Jim?
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Okay,
That was based on what Anna reported, but you gotta get 23 done before you can get 24 done.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't overpromise on 24, because if we did, I'd rather correct that now
Yeah, I
before
think
they
you
get
made
that.
You made that same concern when we had talked about it. I mean,
Okay.
Let's see.
what I was gonna say on the GATA, which may not seem like important to you guys, but the GATA portal is where it all stops and starts with the stop payment list. So if we don't have this stuff figured out, that doesn't get fixed. So it is a big deal. And Scott and I talked at length the other day and we're working together on it and with Natalie on some numbers too. But I also, it is extremely confusing. I will tell you, people can enter it one way and people can do it all different directions and ways. And I have found that when I looked back, the auditors used 3 different methods for their numbers. And so she and I have been in contact and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I've sent her all of the information and said, hey, can you let me know what you want so that I can present it in the same fashion so that I can get ahead of the game for 24, 25. So she has all of 22, all of 23, all of my spreadsheets, everything, since we're the majority of it, and we're gonna work together, because if we can get that starting point, so she can see where my numbers are coming from, I can see where I backed into all their numbers to see what they were doing, and then say, let's start a methodology that we can all agree on, so I can provide those numbers to you at the get-go, and then they don't have to recreate it every time. So yeah, it's taking time right now, but I think in the long run, it will save all of us a lot of time, the county money, time and money, because the issues with the 21, 22 that we're finding, we thought we had it all done, and then when they're doing a review, they're coming back and saying, oh, well, this number, we use this number. So we're trying to figure that out so that we can prevent that in the future. I think we're on the right track, working together.
Good.
It just, some of it is just, it takes time and
And we're under contract through 26, so we're gonna have to probably negotiate a contract for 27 and onward sometime in the next 6 months.
Great. All right.
One last thing, I'll be bringing you, asking for postage, to approve postage next time. I can do it in one,
This year's or next year's?
well, would go on, I would have it go ahead and go in this year, yeah.
You started the year with 23 postage.
23. I hope
Left
that's
over
not
from
possible.
2023?
That's not possible.
It's 24, excuse me, 24. I have to remember which year
That's
this is.
not possible.
25?
I put 8,000 on there and spend about 8,000 a year. It's about 8,000.
23.
We approved you like it's 2,000 or something like that.
2,000.
But we did it in increments
8,000.
because we had a cash flow problem.
What I'm getting at is, I'm gonna do the same thing, and be asking for 8,000 in one hit. And what it does is it saves late fee. Every time I did the 2,000, there's a chance for late fee. Because it goes in front of, I put the postage on the machine, then it has to go through you, and then I have to get an invoice. The invoice can be late, waiting on approval. So at one time, it solves all that. There's no need spreading it out. I did it to help you guys, but there's no need on my end. I have more entries to make, more to follow, more to take care of. But just a heads up for next month.
From last year, begin with right now.
Yeah.
Make sure you should have everything in your 50,000 to move.
Yeah, that's just the reality of what it is, and we do a lot of emailing.
That's your definition of that word.
I'm watching it.
Okay. I put that under new business.
I'll talk to you.
A side item for.
Okay. Any other new business? All right. Review and approval of monthly bills. Mr. Foster, I'm going to rely on your.
I have some totals here, and with the help of our county clerk, and we discovered there was one in there that was not on the list. I added it to the list.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
We have unpaid at 148, 465, 78. Paid of 54, 50, 70. For a grand total of 153, 516, 48.
That's right. I would.
And that doesn't include anything from GIS.
Well, there was one small GIS bill in there that was.
But there's nothing, no, that,
No, the GIS was separate.
For you to review.
That was done separately.
unless what was, yeah, this was $170.
$170, that's what goes for how long? This department,
That's all right. I gotta get the.
So it is in your,
$170.
It's right. We'll do it right
Actually,
back.
GIS in the earlier meeting,
yeah.
it's not on the sheet.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to pay bills in the amount of $153,516.48. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye, those opposed nay. And motion to adjourn.
Made with the-
All right, Lance adjourned. Don, you second.
Yes.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned at Friday at 4:15 p.m.